We've done it. Glory be and mercy me, we've done it yet again. So, a couple of beautiful things to report on right now. First of all, I tidied my apartment, right? Still have to do my dishes, but that's fine. Little baby steps. Going around, cleaning up the apartment makes me feel good about myself. If you're sitting there and you've got some trash around your apartment and you're thinking, I can't be arsed to do it. Boy, howdy, do I ever respect that position. Boy, howdy, do I ever understand where you're coming from. No judgment from me whatsoever. My goodness. These days it just feels like getting out of bed itself is the achievement, you know? Not gonna lie, feeling really tired today. Really, really tired today. Just did the weekend of capitalism, right? Work at the capitalist establishment. And then I do this. You guys know me, I never get days off. No such thing as days off for us who are fighting the good fight. Yeah, I'm just tired of all the BS in the world, period. Yeah, and I mean, to me, it's just like, where's the line? Where does it come to the point where we just finally get that the only way this is going to end is if we physically stop it? Like, that's really what it is for me. Like, I genuinely think people are going to just allow it to continue happening until, like, it ends physically one way or the other, right? Like, that's I think what my point is that there is a physical end to all of this. It does physically stop one way or the other. Whether that physical stop is because wildfires start burning the cities down, whether that physical stop is because famines start to sweep through, or whether that physical stop is because we decide to gather en masse and surround the halls of power and physically stop it. But those are the options, right? Like that is what's happening. And while it's occurring, I just feel like we're living in this, like, absurdist period of, like, identity politics. We're literally watching the world burn down around us, and the hot button issues are still like, is it okay to be trans? Like we can't actually have, but it is starting to get to the point where even the official establishment can no longer ignore what is patently obvious and in front of our faces, right? Like, you are starting to see articles such as this coming out of the Globe and Mail, right? The UN just recognized access to a healthy environment is a universal human right. It's time for Canada to take action. The authors are all professors at the University of British Columbia's Institute for Resources, Environment, and Sustainability. David Boyd is also the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment. Hey, Conton, how you doing? The world's future became a little brighter recently. On July 28th, for the first time in history, the United Nations General Assembly recognized that everyone everywhere has a right to live in a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. Now it's time for Canada to step up and take action to ensure that right for all citizens. Good luck with that. We don't guarantee our citizens anything, right? Ooh, did I get a Jordan B. Peterson ad before you got in? Danarchist, good to see you. Nova Scotia, good to see you. I love the irony on that. I gotta tell you, I love the irony on that. Oh, this is perfect. You guys can help me out. I'm gonna deviate a little bit from this article because this is something that I wanted to... What happens if I hit this? No, that's not what I wanted to hit. This is something I wanted to test. You guys tell me, okay? Tell me, because I think I found a solution. And it was elegant and it was simple. I've been having sound issues. Anytime I played a video, there was lots of echoing. Now, I just put this in, doink, just like that. And I think it's going to resolve all my sound issues. Let me know.
Devastating effects of communism are not just history.
Oh yeah, maybe I should do a lead up on this, right? We envision a world free from the false hope of communism. This comes from the Victims of Communism Foundation. This is just like a propaganda outlet. that exists in order to demonize communism and receives funding from around the world, right? The liberal government funds this, right? So let me know if the sound's okay. I wanted to show this just so that we could laugh at it and see how fucking ridiculous it's getting. Like, how ridiculous the propaganda actually is against communism. So, here we go. This is from the victims of communism.
Devastating effects of communism are not just history.
The devastating effects of communism. You know, like creating the most effective economies of the last 2 centuries, being the first people to make it into space, defeating the Nazis. Let's not forget the devastating effects of defeating the Nazis, right? I hear the spookiness of communism loud and clear. Fantastic. Ligandies, good to see you too. Methane, you too. Major and you too. Guys, I gotta tell you, I'm so happy that you guys are all here. There's so many times. I say this all the time, and I'm gonna keep saying it. Hopefully, I keep saying it until the day I die. You guys are what make the channel. You guys are what make this amazing. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe. Watson, great to see you. Please be sure to like, share, subscribe. Hitting the like button does matter. It does send it around the algorithm. It does make it... You're the first stop, right? The people who are actually subscribers and the people who are actually fans are the first group that the algorithm looks at. And if you're not liking it, if you're not sharing it, then YouTube doesn't either. So... please be sure to like it. Please be sure to share. Please be sure to let the fucking world know I exist. God damn it. And it's a blessing to me. It's an absolute blessing to me that you guys are always here. And when I'm in my darkest and deepest depressions, I think all these guys are going to leave me and everybody's going to go, because that happens, right? People float in, they spend some time, and then they float out, right? We lose contact with one another. There are people who were here at the beginning who are no longer here, right? I think about Ruth. I think about Bumbleguppy. I think about Loaf, right? And these people who were here for a long time, strong followers, and that's normal, right? That's normal. But so I'm so grateful that I've never had to close this down to nobody. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let's have a good laugh at this communist thing. Okay, from the top. I'm also happy that I figured out the solution to this, right? Any updates on the woman who was arrested in London for her communist views? Nope. She's near as I can tell, she's gone completely underground. Like she's taking a break, which I think was the point, right? The point of these sorts of things is to cause problems for communists. Anyway, speaking of causing problems for communists.
Devastating effects of communism are not just history. Today, 1 out of 5 people still live under single-party communist dictatorships.
1 out of 5 people still live under single-party communist dictatorships. So right off the top, they tell just like one of the most egregious lies that get told about communist societies, right? Like the Soviet Union was a form of democracy. The current structure of the National People's Congress is a form of democracy. Is it the Westminster parliamentary democracy system? No. Right? It's not that. It's a different form. It's a different system, but it doesn't, define communism, please. Yeah, they're not going to do that, Watson. Communism was when the government does stuff. That's, you wanna have good mass transit and education, and you wanna have a society where people have food and shelter. You must be a communist. Do they not understand that communism has many different parties under the communist umbrella? I mean, probably, but they're liars, right? They're just frauds. It's as simple as that. Yeah, big government equal government. Yep. Damn, only 1 out of 5? This is unacceptable. It should be 10 out of 5. Exactly, Con. Exactly. Don't you know that under communism, the world's population instantly doubles? All right, let's continue with this train wreck.
The Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation was founded to commemorate the more than 100 million victims of communism.
Including Nazis. Let's not forget that. We're going to commemorate those Nazis. That's great.
Over the last 100 years, and to advocate for the freedom of those still living under totalitarian Marxist regimes today.
Totalitarian Marxist regimes today. This is one of the greatest ironies in this whole video, if you ask me. They literally have a prison, an American-style prison, right, where people are busting out and going out. Who has the world's largest prison population right now, right? That if the Soviet Union had at any point in its existence, if 25% of the world's prison population had have been in the gulags, these capitalists would never shut up about it. They would be saying it right here, right now. They would constantly be bringing it up. They would be constantly bringing it. But if capitalism has 25% of the world's prison population, the vast majority of them minority groups, right? From obviously finding a loophole in the 13th Amendment in order to maintain the system of slavery in America. Yeah, that's normal, right? Normal? No, that's capitalism. That's a free market deciding. You know, that's just natural free market. That's okay. Like, hold on. You guys are suddenly talking about Jesse Ventura believes capitalism and communism should coexist for a successful society. That's because Jesse Ventura's understanding of capitalism versus communism is that thing that we were just making fun of, which is communism is when the government does stuff, right? So really what Jesse Ventura is advocating for is, liberal reformism, right? He thinks that the government should essentially allow capitalist enterprises and entrepreneurs to do what they are currently doing, but with more oversight and regulation. Right? It's like regulatory capitalism is what he's looking for. He's looking like we got to make sure that there are laws that these guys follow, but for the most part they can continue. And so it's like a complete lack of understanding that that's never going to happen, right? That capitalism always degrades into this sort of oligarchic inverted totalitarianism, where you have a party of wealthy psychos buying politicians in order to maintain their positions of privilege and prestige. So you'll never actually get the reforms. You'll never actually get the liberal reform that someone like Jesse Ventura is advocating for. Why? Because the wealthy people at the top don't want. Why would they want to be regulated, right? Like, it's like saying parents should set a bedtime for their kids, but they're going to let their kids decide when that bedtime should be. That's essentially what someone like Ventura is arguing in favor of, right? We're just going to let the kids decide when to set the bedtime. We're going to have a bedtime, though. Those kids need to make sure that they've got a good bedtime so they can get to sleep on time. And the best way to organize for a kid to go to bed is to ensure that the kid themselves sets the bedtime. That's for sure how they're going to make sure that they get to bed and get a good night's sleep. Because what kid won't follow his own bedtime? I'm Jesse Ventura, fighting and advocating for liberal democracy. I love pretending to be Jesse Ventura. I like it when you guys bring him up. He's one of my favorite voices. Just don't know anything about colonial history and geopolitics, you're good to go. Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. Not certain I'd call the Soviet Union or China Marxist, but whatever. Watson, don't start. Don't start. Don't you start, Watson. Hearing this dude talk about communism just makes me want to oppress a small business owner. Like Animal Farm, 1984, an HVAC business owner. Yeah, let's get him. H of C, better get those buzzwords in. Yeah, V of C. Oligarchy converted totalitarianism. Yep, thank you, Watson. Thank you. It's all self-regulated like Wall Street and the SEC. All the same guys. Yeah, conflicts of interest between finance, government, tech. Too many to count. Yep. All right.
Our vision is a world...
Like, literally, here's China, right? Red China. We gotta go against the red Chinese.
From the false hope.
Turn them blue. We're gonna turn those red Chinese blue, which is the American way. Like, straight up, like, what is this but an advocacy for, like, war? Like, if I was a Chinese citizen, right, and I was looking at this, right, was watching this, and I saw
Under
this.
Totalitarian Marxist
Right?
regimes.
First of all, totalitarian Marxist regimes. I'd be like rolling my eyes at these guys, like, what the fuck?
Day.
Like, I don't think I'm living in a totalitarian dictatorship if I'm living in China. Like,
Our vision is a world
This
free
right
from
here?
the false hope of communism.
from the false hope of communism. A world free from the false hope of communism. Literally, if I'm 70 years old, living in China, I have just watched the entire civilization in the span of my lifetime lift hundreds of millions of people out of grinding poverty, create a trajectory for generations to actually live in stable, clean societies where the society is constantly changing and improving myself. And here are these assholes calling it a totalitarian dictatorship. And essentially this is an advocacy for a fucking war. For just like a total war. That the Americans are, like, the victims of communism are basically saying, we want to overthrow China, we want to overthrow the leadership of China, and install our own liberal democracy. That's what they're doing. I would be fucking aghast at this. Can you imagine if China said that their objective was to overthrow the government of America and install pro-Chinese leadership? Like, what would the Americans fucking say to that? But the victims of communism, we could just openly do this in front of the entire fucking world and expect that the response from the world isn't, that sounds horrific and fucking psychotic. Like, these psychos are openly advocating for regime change and war in one of the most populous countries. And incidentally, what's this false hope of communism that you're talking about? What? You're talking about the false hope of literally lifting 100 million, like 800 million people out of poverty? You're talking about the false hope of literally giving people hope? Is that the false hope? Like, what pathetic small-dicked losers these people are. Just like, can you imagine actually running this institution? Like, actually being responsible for actually running this complete and total fraud show? Like, talk about little dick energy, man. Unbelievable.
There are 3 key ways we do this: teach truth, keep memory, and seek justice.
Teach truth, keep memory, seek justice. It's like some good, speaking of 1984, right? Like, just like the opposite of what is real, right? Teach truth. What are you talking about? Let's see how they teach truth.
It's important to educate about the truth of communism,
The truth of communism.
especially today because of all the misinformation that exists nearly everywhere.
All the misinformation that we ourselves are responsible for generating.
The reality is, communism is deadly, dangerous, and more than 1.6 billion still live
1.6
oppressed
billion
by this false
still
ideology.
live oppressed. 1.6 billion people are still oppressed, which is why we need to go in and overthrow their governments. We need to overthrow their deadly, dangerous, oppressive governments and install governments that are free like America, because everything's going so fucking well in America, right? Everything's going so well in America.
Whether it's high schoolers or teachers, college students, or members of Congress, we work to equip people with the facts about
Equip people with the fact. You notice how they're not telling us what the facts are, right? You're noticing that right here. They're not really telling us what those facts are, because they don't actually have facts. They always just come up with some goddamn bullshit that's so easy to dismantle. It's ridiculous.
the deadliest ideology in history.
The deadliest ideology in history. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, the deadliest ideology in history? So, like, Vlad the Impaler, the Romans with, like, the crucifixion regime, the Huns. Like, oh yeah, these are not deadly ideologies. Communism is definitely deadlier. Just like child brain at this point.
We also strive to keep
Castro, right? You got to make sure you get Castro in there, right? Who are their witnesses, right? Their witnesses are literally the plantation owners. Like, this organization would literally have said of the people who had to free their slaves after losing the Civil War, oh, these are the victims. This is the victims of Lincolnism. Right? Oh, look, Lincoln was a whore. I should do that. That would be a great video, right? Do a great video of that, about people really shitting on Lincoln for having freed the slaves. And, like, do a bunch of, like, My family had a wealthy farm, and we were all doing so well, and then Mr. Lincoln freed the slaves, and now we're out of money. I have to actually work with my hands in the fields myself to actually make any money. Like, that's essentially what they're doing, right? They essentially look at the people who communists fight against and overthrow, right? That's what they're doing. They go to like the Gusanos, right? They go to the Nazis, and they go, these people have been what an injustice that has happened to these Nazis and kulaks and fucking Gusanos, right? Get completely fucked.
Memory, which means preserving the stories of those who were killed by communist regimes.
Yeah, preserving the stories of those who were killed by communist regimes. Gusanos, kulaks, and fucking Nazis. That's what, and they're just telling you that, right? They're straight up telling you that. Like, let's go back, right? That's what they're saying, outright.
Whether it's high schoolers or teachers, college students, or members of Congress,
the only thing that's missing
we
is
work
just
to
a
equip
swastika.
people with the facts about the deadliest ideology in history. We also strive to keep memory, which means preserving the stories of those who were killed by communist regimes.
Well, yeah, those that were killed by communist regimes. Nazis, kulaks, Gusanos. Like, that's the memory that they're preserving. They're basically just telling it to you. Right? And they're trying to frame it in this, like, we're the true victims. Certainly we didn't get what we completely deserved for being psychos. Ugh.
It's important to keep their memory alive so that we never forget just how horrible communism is.
To Nazis.
This is why we have annual events to commemorate their lives and tell their stories through art, literature, music, and film. We seek justice for ethnic minorities and prisoners of conscience who are persecuted and deprived of their rights in China, Cuba, Laos, Vietnam, and North Korea.
This is straight up just like the Uyghur genocide bullshit, right? They can't actually say Uyghur genocide anymore, like, and maintain any credibility, even though they have none, because people are over it. Like, we know it's total fucking bullshit. I even have an article here that where are you? Yeah. Islamic envoy says China is protecting minorities in Xinjiang after 5-day visit. Right? Envoy, I'll read this later. This is fine. Let's finish this.
Whether you're passionate about education, human rights, or justice, join us in the fight against communism. Join us in the fight for freedom, prosperity, and
just like a good capitalist video just ends. Freedom, prosperity, and I can't think of a third one. So yeah, Watson's just like naming all of the people. Dude, you could be here all day if that's what you want to do. You want to sit here and talk about the absolute abominations that are the fucking capitalist crimes? All right, Watson, now you're just showing off now, Watson. You're just showing off. I do want to read this article. Envoys from 30 Islamic countries said they believe China is protecting the rights of the Uyghur population in the self-autonomous Xinjiang region after a 5-day visit. Diplomats from countries including Algeria, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Yemen, and Pakistan visited Xinjiang's capital, Urumqi, along with Kashgar and Aksu prefectures from August 1st to 5th. They were invited by China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And of course, you know what the counter to this is going to be, right? By the fucking loser capitalists. Well, yeah, those are the evil countries. Those are the evil countries where people do evil things. So, of course, the evil countries go to the evil Chinese, the communist Chinese, and say there's no genocide here because they're all putty. It's all just a trade alliance that they're getting into. They're the evil ones. Like this is like the psychotic American way, right? They're not white, so they're evil. It's very straightforward. It's very straightforward, and it's 100% what they would say. Like, it's how they say down here. We've got another. I'll get to that here. The fruit here is so sweet, just like the life of people here. Hassane Rabehi, Algerian ambassador to China, said. Mr. Rabehi that he got to know the real situation, of the people in the northwest Chinese province, and contrary to the claims made by Western governments, the rights of all ethnic groups are well protected. The US and its allies have taken up claims by Uyghur separatist groups that China has imprisoned large number of Uyghurs, suppressed their culture, and sterilized women to suppress the birth rate. The evidence provided for these claims has been hotly contested. Emanating from limited sources, including anti-China anti-China evangelist Adrian Zenz and the CIA-backed World Uyghur Congress. Few Muslim countries have accepted the accusations. A letter signed by 45 Muslim countries in 2020 said, "It is imperative to respect the basic facts rather than making unfounded allegations against China and interfere out of political motivations and bias." Mr. Rabahi said that Algeria hopes to strengthen ties with Xinjiang on construction, education, agriculture, and scientific research. Bruneian ambassador to China, Pahin Dato Rahmani, said that after years of effort, Xinjiang has made remarkable achievements in development and that different ethnic groups live there harmoniously. Earlier this year, United Nations Human Rights Commissioner Michelle Bachelet resigned after she came under intense pressure following a visit to China. She was criticized for failing to find evidence of human rights abuses in China, including a genocide of the Uyghur community. You can't find what's not there. I was surprised when she resigned, honestly. I was like, I don't know why her response wasn't, you can't find what's not there, right? It's like criticizing somebody for taking a visit to the ocean and not finding a desert, right? You didn't find any evidence of deserts in the middle of the ocean. Oh, terrible, right? Anti-China NGOs have long demanded she visit Xinjiang to check allegations of mass incarcerations of Uyghurs, but dismissed the visit as a Chinese propaganda stunt as soon as it was agreed. Isn't that fun? Right? Anti-China NGOs are like, you gotta go down there. You gotta visit. Why don't you? Huh? You're working with the Chinese. That's what you're doing. You're on the side of the Chinese. And then finally she's like, oh yeah, we can do that. Like, hey China, do you want to do that? And China's like, yeah, let's get you on down here. Come on, let's clear this up. What a misunderstanding this all has been. You come on down here. Let's get this all squared away. She's like, okay, great. And the NGOs are immediately like, oh, this is just a Chinese propaganda stunt. Because it's super easy. I actually had somebody say this to me. That, oh, it would be easy to hide a genocide. And I was just like, bro, no. Like, no. You cannot hide a genocide. Literally, America has satellites in the sky that are so powerful that they can read signs on the ground from space, right? You cannot hide a genocide, right? You cannot, think about the process of actually and in the time scale that they talk about. In the time scale, it's 4 or 5 years, right? You're telling me that they have incarcerated upwards of 8 million people in secret, just secretly done it. There's no evidence. There's no satellite imagery. There's no moving of things. There's no mass graves. There's nothing. There's literally nothing. It blows me away that this is still taken seriously at all, right? And it is because of organizations like the Victims of Communism spreading around total fucking bullshit. Right? Yeah. I think my favorite supervillain power that China has is the ability to organize a mass genocide, upwards of 8 million Uyghur people, right? Not to mention the forced detention camps, right? Not to mention the forced labor camps, right? All of that, without talking about it. Right? Without talking about it. I think that's the most impressive part. Right? That when the Americans committed a genocide against the First Nations, as well as the slavery against the black population, they did so very openly. Right? Because you have to. Right? You have to. How do you talk about it? How do you organize without talking about it? Right? Are the Chinese people so advanced as a people that they can just look at one another and just through nods and winks come to an understanding that they have to do it. Like, at some point, you've got to pick up a phone and go, hello there, I would like to do a thing. And have another person go, interesting, I too would like to do that thing. Perhaps we should create some kind of foundational document from which to operate from. Excellent, let us write out. Just like the Canadian government did during the residential schools, right? Where it passed legislation through its parliament. That fundamentally, this Uyghur genocide thing relies on the abject stupidity of Westerners to be believed. That, like, so they've organized this massive military operation, right? Without writing down ever a plan, a policy, an idea, a thought. Not even a foundational document like Mein Kampf was, right? Nothing. Literally nothing. And yet it's supposed to be believed that this has occurred, right? And if you bring this up, they're like, it's in the past, stop bringing it up. Yeah, yeah. Why do people keep bringing up slavery? Why does that matter at all, even though we're still doing slavery? Completely, fully, openly, 100%. Like, what do you think, dude? Why do you think we should continually bring up America's ongoing relationship with slavery? Like, blah, blah. And that's the part about it that I think is the most embarrassing for conservatives and liberals. Oh, it's in the past. It happened so long ago, right? And even people who are like, it didn't happen that long ago. Like, you got like Joe Rogan. He's like, it didn't happen that long ago. It was only like 3 people ago, right? Nobody is walking around saying, long ago, what are you talking about? It's happening right now. Literally now. Today. It's happening right now. That you think the American prison system isn't a slave system? You're fucking fooling yourself. You're living in a dreamland where slavery was so long ago and Martin Luther King solved racism and you might as well think that Santa Claus is real, right? 25 of the world's prison population, obviously being done to use the 13th Amendment, the loophole that they put into the 13th Amendment where they allowed prisoners to still be slaves, right? So what do? They just pick up black people and put them in prison so that they can become slaves. It's obvious. It's blatantly obvious. And it takes a special kind of like naive white guy to be like, well, those people committed a crime. They're guilty of a crime. Yeah, like George Floyd was guilty of a crime, right? Like, there's no such thing as like a power structure that is actively enslaving a population unjustly, right? That's certainly not what's happening. Normal. Yeah. I'm on the side of the Chinese, not gonna lie. I mean, like, anytime anybody has critiqued to me the Chinese government, and I think that that's right to do, right? I'm not like I'm not so naive to believe that the Chinese government is a perfect institution. But anytime I have seen somebody critique the government, it always looks to me like it's trying to resolve the issue at hand, right? That it's actually looking at what the problem is, acknowledging that it is a problem, and attempting to improve upon it, right? Which, that's all you can really ask. That's all you can really ask any institution or any person to do, right? Like, then you compare what's happening here, where you're like, oh, hey, here's a problem. And when you investigate the problem, you find out that not only does that problem exist on purpose, right? Not only does that problem exist on purpose, but that usually the institutions responsible for regulating or overseeing the problem are making it worse on purpose, right? Money. Yeah, it'd need to be underground. Like, literally, it would need to be underground. What? Wait a minute. Why are they building all this high-speed rail? Is it for the genocide trains? That's what it says. Yeah, of course China built all that high-speed rail. It's so that they can maximize the genocide. That's what it is. John, your headphones are out of juice. Can't listen today? Compton. Compton. I'm so sorry to hear that. You're out of the club. That's okay, Con. You will be missed from now until forever. The past only matters if it's about the enemy country. Exactly. Yep, exactly, Ligandese. Like, oh yeah, communism doesn't work because of a famine that happened one time. Well, slavery's over. Why focus on the past? I'm surprised everyone didn't know the Chinese use mental telepathy to achieve this genocide of the Uyghurs. Exactly. Right? Obviously, that's what has to be the case. Man, the Chinese with their mental telepathy advantage. You'll note that those liberals and conservatives that invokes King's name never look at his well-known critiques of capitalism. Yeah, of course. No, that's exactly... They do the same thing with Martin Luther King that they do with identity politics issues, right? Like, they use the sections of King's belief system that can be used for identity politics as a shield to deflect away from issues of class, and they pretend like they're an ally while doing so, right? Instead of acknowledging, like, I literally had a conversation with somebody today about Superman with this. Like, that's what they're doing with Superman. That Superman is just like, instead of him actually fighting frauds like Trump and Biden and like these obvious Nazis that exist amongst us, like Superman is like dealing with like it's okay to be gay, right? Which, fantastic, like off you go. But hey, there's, like, there are pressing issues in regards to class in our society. We could have an adult conversation about. But if you bring this up in liberal circles, you just get shit on because they're like, oh, they just call you a homophobe. Like, that's what happens, right? If you say like, hey, it's great and all that we're talking about like identity issues, but maybe we should actually also talk about class. You just get called a homophobe and the conversation ends. So it's very straightforward, right? Like it's the perfect shield for them, and they use it all the time, and they use it in the conversation with Martin Luther King. All the time, or a racist, yeah, whatever, right? And you're just like, oh, okay, so you're not capable of intellectual thought. Like, that's really the bottom line on it. Like, if your response to somebody saying, I am concerned that institutions are incentivized to use identity politics issues as a shield to defend against discussing class issues, and you get called a racist or a homophobe for it, it's over, right? Like, some people just don't want to think. It's very simple. They just don't want to think, and they just want to shut it down, and become the example, right? Because that's what they're doing. They're calling you a transphobe. They're calling you a racist, and all you can do is look at them and be like, see, here it is, right? You're doing it right in front of us, right? Instead of actually dealing with the class issue, instead of actually focusing on that, you're using identity politics and accusations of racism or transphobia in order to deflect away from it. It's happening in real time, right in front of your face, right? But we just have a childish culture, very straightforwardly. Apparently, we cannot walk and chew gum at the same time. If you're understanding what I'm saying, yeah, I mean, like, it's all well and good to bring up issues of identity politics, but it's always used, like 100% or like 99.9% of the time. It's always used as a way to drag the conversation away from class. Right? And so instead of actually focusing on the class issue, the class structure, the antagonism that exists between the owners and the owned, right? You're always pulled in to a conversation of identity politics. Because at the end of the day, the ownership class is fine if you're trans or gay or black or white or anything. They're fine with all of that as long as you show up to work on time and do all the work for them. And the moment you start saying, hey, why are we doing all the work for these losers who don't do anything? Oh, you're just a homophobic racist. Like, it's as simple as that. Transylvanian. I gotta tell you, I love this name. I love this name, especially if it's genuine. Like, if you are a trans person on the other end of this line, that is a brilliant name. And especially if your name is like Sylvan or something like that, right? Mwah, just masterful. Or if you are a vampire, then that is also good. The reality is that a lot of people are still very racist and homophobic. That is true. I won't ever stand up against that. In my opinion, liberals like it that way. They like being able to wage a perpetual struggle on cultural issues instead of class. Exactly. right? And most of, like this creates the appearance of politics, right? That the conservatives and the liberals can really go after one another. They can really go after one another and just like smash into one another and be like, "Brrr," on issues of identity, right? Which creates the image, the appearance of politics. When in reality, like, both of them more or less agree, right? That, like, when it comes to the issue of, like, yeah, these guys are going to do all our work for us while we enslave them, right? Both of them are just like, yeah, obviously. So we're going to have a big, loud conversation about whether or not they get to have pink hair or not, right? Oh, the woke crowd, right? Yeah, like so they've created terminology, they've created all this kind of stuff, they've created the appearance of politics and debate, right? When at the end of the day, you and I are still going to work for these psychos. Like, that's really what it is. Oh yeah, okay, Romania, have some vampire genes in me. Yeah, of course. As is well known, everyone from Romania is a little bit vampiric. That's just, we know that's true. Thomas Sowell isn't a race traitor. He is a willing operative for the ruling class in the service of maintaining the class divisions and bourgeoisie status quo. Yeah. I mean, Thomas Sowell's just a loser. Like, you're saying it in a very nice way, but he's a loser. Like, he's a total loser. The arguments that he used are so transparently stupid. He's like the last gasp of a system that's obviously dying, right? And just like Peterson, like, they're gonna say anything they can say in order to convince gullible kids to think, no, that is, I should, you know, clean up the room, just just get a job, like really. Meanwhile, like, you know, you guys know that the cities are going to burn down, right? Like, you know that the cities are burning down, right? Like this is what's so shocking about today's politics. Like, literally, cities are going to burn down. That it's coming. Like, I will, in my lifetime, be sitting here reporting on wildfires sweeping through Canadian cities. That's what's going to be happening. For sure. Please tune in. Please tune in for the apocalypse. Right? Ugh. It reminds me, like, I've started writing again. I'm writing a book. It's called Necromancer. I've charted out the first 3 chapters already for sure. And I think the thing that's the most satisfying thing about writing the story is the full acknowledgement, basically from the hop, that we are amidst an apocalypse. This is an apocalypse. And we know what's causing the apocalypse, right? I layer on a nice supernatural level, right? Because oil is the bones of our ancestors, right? It's dead and compressed living matter, right? And so this necromancer is able to communicate with it, because what do necromancers do? They communicate and raise the dead, right? That's what they do in a mystical way. So he's able to talk to it and communicate with it and use it to do various things, right? So he always has, like, vessels of oil and pools of oil around because they have this kind of power. And the acknowledgement is that we humans have been burning the bones of our ancestors, right? And so what have they been doing? They've been going up into the atmosphere. And what are they doing? They're blocking the radiance of God's holy sun, right? That's what they're doing. And so angels can't come onto Earth anymore because the spirits of the dead have been blocking them. And so demons and devils have been coming up freely without resistance. And so the necromancer manages to come in contact with one of the trapped angels on the ground, and chaos ensues. Huh? Doesn't this book sound sweet? Doesn't this book sound sweet as shit? Huh? I feel like I'm writing the coolest book of time. Transylvanian, you just talked about something, but the thing I like writing about it is that just the acknowledgement. Like, this is climate change. Climate change is here. It's not going to be nice, right? And I'm merging that with Christian theology and Christian lore, because at the exact same time that the apocalypse is coming, right? We've got a theocratic Christian death cult that's taking over the United States, right? I think this book will do really well, right? Yes, thank you, Transylvanian. Also, I think that's exactly right. How else do you get these boobs to actually be like, climate change, eh? Well, you make it magic. That's it. And my favorite part of the story is that I'm seeking to alienate all sides. Because the protagonist is a necromancer. So he's going to go around and he's going to have the like righteousness of truth. He's going to be seeing everything around and be like, yeah, right? And he's going to know it's true because he talks to the dead, right? And and the first scene is him going and talking to a recently assassinated Doug Ford. Let's just call it what it is, right? It's Doug Ford, and I assassinate Doug Ford in. Don't flag me, YouTube. It's a story. It's a story. Anyway. Yeah, I will be sending you live feed as I flee the fires. Exactly. It's a good mythological interpretation of our situation. Yeah, that's why I think it's brilliant. It takes the reality and puts a mystical spin on it. Keep in mind, the Christian will see it as heretical because of the magic in the book. Who gives a fuck? Like, the Christians are heretics. Like, that's black and white in my view. Like, evangelical Christians are heretics, straight up. They believe in a Jesus Christ who doesn't exist in the text and cannot be represented in the text. And they say the most insipid bullshit ever that cannot be tolerated or cannot be believed whatsoever. Like, and this is why I say, I'll say this over and over and over again, right? Actually read your Bible. I got it right here. Actually read this thing. Actually read it. And not even like all of it. Read Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Right? Give it and don't feel the need to be like, and on the like King Herod heard it, for Jesus' name had become, like, don't do it. Just like literally like page flip. Like speed run it. Just like look at the words and just go get the information in your eye holes. And the only conclusion that any rational, sane person can have from doing that process to one of the Gospels is these people are heretical frauds. There is no other position, right? They don't know anything about the text. They don't read the text. They defend pedophiles, murderers, rapists. They're the most despicable people on the planet, even according to their own book. So I say everybody should read this thing once, right? And one of the Gospels, pick one, read it. It's immediate. It's immediate. Yeah, a bee already tried to get Doug. I hope that happens again. I hope he gets hit by a swarm of bees. I hope the bees. We don't know. These bees, man, they're very intelligent. Bees are very intelligent. Yeah, dude, the bee he swallowed choked him. God bless that bee. Hero bee. Thank you, bee. He tried his best. Tried his best. Needs to get some friends next time. Yeah, 52 degrees is apocalyptic. This is the apocalypse. This is the apocalypse. I can barely stand when it gets over 30. Yeah, let's read this one. Much of the U.S. will be an extreme heat belt by the 2050s. Temperatures will hit 52 degrees Celsius, that's 125 Fahrenheit, at least once a year in a band stretching from Texas to Wisconsin, researchers say. So you think it's hot out there now? Consider the summer of 2053. That's what researchers at First Street Foundation, a New York nonprofit that studies climate risks, have done in a report published today. They predict that in 3 decades, more than 100 million Americans will live in an extreme heat belt, where at least once a day the heat index will exceed 125 degrees Fahrenheit, 52 Celsius, the top level of the National Weather Service's heat index, or the extreme danger level. The index combines temperature and humidity to arrive how it feels when you go outside. Yeah, here's a fun little map. right? Here's a fun little map. So this is how it is like right now, essentially. I think that's 2025. I can't quite see. Let's open this image. Opening image. So 2023, right? Here's your extreme heat belt of extreme danger days, right? At least one day that's greater than 125 degrees Celsius. Here's where it is tomorrow, basically, to 2023, right? Here's where it'll be 2053. So 20 years, 30 years later. So you're basically looking at like a whole belt right here that's going to be uninhabitable by any measure, right? And then, of course, you've got beautiful places over here down in this area, right? And this isn't even mixing in the global, rising sea levels. Along with the report, First Street has released a free web tool that lets users search U.S. addresses to determine their heat risk. The future heat belt is a huge swath of the country that includes the southeast area and just west of the Appalachian Mountains, stretching from Texas and Louisiana all the way up through Missouri and Iowa to the Wisconsin border. This is not the part of the nation we most associate with heat, but since it is inland, there are no coastal influences to mitigate extreme temperatures, and many communities are not acclimatized to warmer weather relative to their normal climate, the report states. The sharpest heat increase, however, will be felt in Miami-Dade County, Florida. Yeah. We all knew it, guys. We all knew it. The devil comes from Florida. Although, I guess it's the devil lives in Georgia, is how the song actually goes. Florida, where the hottest days now, those reaching 103 degrees Fahrenheit, will increase in frequency from 7 days a year to 34 by 2053. The deeper the red, the steeper the modeled increase from the number of days. Here come the fires, here come the flame, here come the fire, here come the flame. There we go. There's a new tune. Here comes the fire, here comes the flame, here comes the fire. Who's left to blame? Love it. Love it. Like, get fucked. Like, get fucked, southern states. Like, the great irony of all of this is that it's the states that most virulently say that climate change does not exist that are the ones that are going to be utterly destroyed by it. Like, that's the great... Like, I don't want to celebrate this, right? Like, I don't want to sit here and be like, hey, they're the ones that are fighting against it, and so they're the ones who will burn. But there is, like, that element, right? Like, it feels like there's a kind of karmic justice, doesn't it? It's not like these are the people who are primarily denying it, right? Like, it's not like it's the people in cities like New York, right? Or Seattle or any of this that are sitting there being like, I don't know about the climate change thing. We know it's primarily the southern states. Like, we know, right? It's largely Republican voters, right? So it's just like, it's like a universal, it's universally beautiful in the way that it connects, right? They are the ones responsible for their own destruction, right? And exactly, I don't want to get like all schadenfreude about it, right? Like, I'm not happy about it, you know? Like, I can acknowledge that they're just like, I can acknowledge the sort of storytelling beauty of it, right? That there's a kind of justice. Like, when we see the villain get his comeuppance, if his comeuppance comes in the form of the very thing he was attempting to fight against, seems just. But I guess, and you know what? Something I'm just realizing right now, like, these people are victims, right? That's what it is, like, more than anything, right? There is sort of this instinct inside of me that's like, the very people who denied the existence of climate change, they're the ones that are going to eat climate change. Schadenfreude, irony, right? Dramatic perfection, karma. But these people have been lied to, right? We know who lied to them, We know that ExxonMobil has been lying. We know that the Koch brothers have been lying. We know that they've been lied to on a huge and massive scale. And there's no institution in America that is attempting to offer a counterbalance to these people. That's something that I've been talking a lot to people who actually live in these southern states, is that there is no counterbalance. The Democrats aren't going in there and being like, actually, climate change does exist here, right? That doesn't exist. So what they get is they get Koch propaganda, they get ExxonMobil propaganda. It's everywhere you look, right? About how climate change, Chinese hoax. The fucking president of the United States, right? The fucking president of the United States called climate change a Chinese hoax, right? They have been lied to. They've been lied to. So these people, while simultaneously buying in to a well-funded and well-crafted and persistent lie, right, are going to be utterly victimized by it. Like, they are the ones who are going to be the victims of this in huge and undeniable ways. Like, brutal. The findings are part of the 6th report by First Street to help Americans picture how warming will impact them at home. Previous reports looked at fires and floods, and the Foundation made available fire and flood risk scores for every property in the contiguous U.S. on its website. Unlike those menaces, heat does not affect the survival of homes themselves and related insurance costs, so it does not have the same immediate threat to property value. I mean, I would think rising heat brings, like, fire, right? Right? Exactly. Are they really villains or victims? I see them as victims. The true villains of the piece, right? And we know who they are. We know who they are. The true victims. The true villains. And we got to keep our eye on the prize on this, right? We know who the villains are. We know who they are. And these are the people who should at least be incarcerated. At least be incarcerated. Like, ugh. And of course I lose my spot. Here we go. Yeah, there's no justice in that. The rich don't care. Yeah, they won't suffer. They're pretty beyond all that sort of thing. I don't see any actual consequences of the one profiting. Yeah, they'll literally just, like, leave and go somewhere else. Right? They'll just go to their stupid bunkers and their dumb, stupid fucking things and go to Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island. Right? So if I sit here and all I do is go, ha ha, these people, ha ha, right? It's just fucking asshole shit. My sadistic side of me, I'm looking forward to it and say them, yeah, and say to them, you thought communism killed so many people, look what capitalism brought you, yeah. But these guys literally think Joe Biden is a communist, right? These guys say that fucking, like, Joe Rogan says that Trudeau is a communist, right? These guys are so fucking thick, they're so fucking stupid that they actually think that the Democrats and the liberals are communists. Like, that's how embarrassing it's gotten. Like, so if this happens, they'll for sure say, people like Trump and DeSantis and Cruz and Gates and all these fucking frauds and liars, they're for sure gonna be like, this is all because of the years of communist rule by Joe Biden and the Democrats. Like, yeah, for sure. And all these guys are gonna buy into that. Right? My human side will sadden the innocent loss of lives. It's just madness what's happened. Now, before we go feeling too sad about USians, you mean Americans? I like that better, though. That's what I'm going to call them from now on, USians. Let's remember that climate change will impact most harshly people in the global south. That's absolutely the truth. Yeah, who have even less resources to deal with its consequences. Absolutely the truth. While being much less responsible for it. Absolutely the truth. Yeah, capitalists are the villains. And what will end up happening is mass migrations, which will be reacted by the global north with genocidal violence, absolutely. Eco-fascism, absolutely. Killing the thousands of people attempting to cross their borders, absolutely. All of that's 100% true. Like, that's the reality, right? That the second you actually step out into the global picture, like, China is going to get it. Like, China's going to get it in big, big ways. Let's do the thing we love to do. Open the map, right? China's going to get it in big, big ways, right? Like, we take a look. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out, right? So here's where they're talking about in the United States, all the heat going crazy, all that kind of stuff. Well, right? And this area of China, it also has something of a there's an extra layer of humidity onto it, right? That creates a wet bulb phenomenon. So literally, the air will become so thick and hot that people will not be able to breathe it. You're looking at Taiwan, Shanghai, Dongguan, right? Xiamen, Guangzhou, like these places, like, and that's not even including the water level rises that are going to happen throughout China, right? This area is mainly low level, like and so if the water levels go up even a little, right, you're going to see huge floods. It's going to be, it is already a natural disaster for the Chinese, and they have to know it. Like they can't pretend like they're not. And the unfortunate reality is that because of the military threat of the United States constantly threatening Chinese sovereignty, which we literally just saw in a Victims of Communism video, China has had to ramp up its pollution. It's had to ramp up its fossil fuel usage in order to actually protect itself from this existential threat of the Americans. So instead of the Americans going, oh shit, climate change, it's going to destroy everything, it's going to be a big problem for everybody, we gotta slow down, they're doing the opposite. They're escalating it as fast as they possibly can. I'm a communist and Trudeau is never at the meetings. Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, if Trudeau's a communist, he's a pretty bad one. Like, why hasn't he been nationalizing resources, right? Like, why hasn't he been actually trying to, like, I don't know, create any kind of institution that matters? Trudeau's such a fucking loser, dude. Like, I feel like that guy's going to be, like, 85 looking back on his life and be like, oh, I was a loser. Like, I did nothing. I was just a pathetic pawn for this class of psychopaths. I just don't know how you end up anywhere else. Yeah, the denial is so strong it's evolved into mass delusion. Yeah, and I mean, it does feel that way. It feels as though the society is regressing into a type of superstition. That superstition is taking everything over, and that people are retreating into enclaves, right? And like they're retreating into like Star Wars and Marvel shit and Christianity and just these religious and cultural ideologies that mainly are magical in the way that they view the world, and that superstition is going to just completely go on the rise. We're all just going to march towards this apocalypse while watching fucking TikTok videos and shit, right? Seems to be what's going on. Yeah, Justin Trudeau, worst communist ever. No shit, eh? China is actually one of the countries that I'm least worried about because they have the capability and the organizational prowess to undertake mass projects to protect its people. See, for instance, their anti-desertification efforts. Yeah, that is absolutely true. But the problem is that this is a global issue. And China does not have control over the number one polluter, right? Which is America and the American military. Like, they simply don't have control of it. And so the things that are going to happen in China, just as things will happen in America, right? Just as things are going to happen across the Middle East, right? Just as things are going to happen in Africa, South America, right? Just as things are going to get crazy, right? On the equator, right? Around this whole area, things are going to get crazy in China, and it's going to be pretty nuts. Like, will they be able to handle it? Sure. Like, they will make decisions and do things, and they have an organizational structure. I think the biggest strength of the Chinese is that they actually plan. I think that's the biggest strength of their society, is that they actually have a government who the people look at and trust generally, that actually creates plans and then follows those plans. That's an enormous boon for any civilization and culture. Is a society of people actually making plans and following through on those plans. I'm more or less of the opinion that if we actually gave a shit about climate change, we would be paying places like the The Democratic Republic of the Congo, I did it. We'd be paying Brazil, we'd be paying Colombia, Venezuela, we'd be paying them to keep the Amazon rainforest intact. To keep the rainforests intact. That's what we'd be actually doing if we actually gave a shit about this. If we cared about climate change even a little. To me, it would be the first thing. We would go to Brazil, we would go to the DRC, and we'd be like, and honestly, like, we would say to these oil executives, if you touch the Amazon rainforest, we will arrest you. Like, just straight up. Like, this whole idea that we're gonna, like, incentivize in the market through taxation, like, these people are psychopaths. They want to destroy the place. Like, we have to incarcerate them. It's the only thing they'll take seriously. I think China can build large-scale projects to hold back the sea level rise, and if need be, they can relocate fairly competently cities of tens of millions. Yeah. And also, like, there's a Vox documentary that I watched, like, years and years back that China just builds cities. It just straight up builds cities all over the place, right? And it's like the empty city phenomenon. And part of it was that they were building for a rising population, right? But they're also, like, aware of the transient nature of what's going to come. And hoping, I think, that migration is going to occur within their own borders primarily. Yeah, and they're going to say it's karma and laugh at how incompetent China is at dealing with this apocalypse-level disaster that is wrecking everyone else in the world. Yeah, and they're going to do that while their own cities burn down, right? That's how fucking, like, deluded Americans have become. They're going to point at China and be like, oh, look, they're doing it so badly. Meanwhile, it's going to be like another New Orleans, right? Another New Orleans is going to happen, and we're just going to ignore it like we did last time. Florida is going to flood. Like, the whole fucking thing's going to flood. Like, and what's our plan? That's our whole plan. We'll let the market decide. We'll let the market decide. And when the rich people don't come and save all the black people, oh, well, I guess that's just the market deciding, right? China also has plentiful water supply from the Tibetan Plateau, and they have big rivers which will keep their agriculture running. Other countries will be severely hit by droughts and famines. Yeah. China's looking pretty good to me. I like a lot of what it does and direction it's headed, though some of the other things I'm a little less sure. Glad I don't have to live under those rules. I mean, I don't know, dude. We here in the West are so used to just living in a lawless society, which is that's what this is. Right? It's just kind of a lawless society where anybody gets to do what they want. And the only way anything is ever enforced is just through aggressive forms of violence, right? And so we're so used to, like, the wealthy never actually paying any consequences. We're so used to it just being, like, extraction and abandonment that if we look at another society and it has rules at all, we're just so used to being like, I don't know about rules. I don't know about that. Is that, you know? So is it that the rules in China are actually oppressive? Is it that the people of China actually feel suppressed and actually feel as though they're constantly looking over their shoulders and needing to whisper to one another, and, like, are the rules so bad that they've got to it's, like, fundamentally altered the way anyone wants to live and all of this? Or is it literally just that they have a rule and we don't? That's more or less how I look at it. I'm like, yeah, they probably just, like, have rules and we're just completely not used to it. I personally am extremely worried about Bangladesh. Hold on. Bangladesh. I know where Bangladesh is. I do. It's here. It's here. That's Nepal. Yeah, I was close. I was here. I was really close. Good enough. It's extremely densely populated country, has already experienced devastating famines in the past. Yeah, very vulnerable. I mean, I generally think that as these crises begin to unfold, countries are not going to be able to maintain their independence like this. Like, I really do feel like that's the case. That lots of these countries are going to start to think, maybe we should create larger systems. Maybe we should, like, swing over India, swing over to China, like, swing over and connect, right? For systems of support. There's only one way for the climate change to halt would be when we run out of resources. Yeah, like sand, for example. Yeah, not enough sand. We need to build more sand. Yeah, dude. Like when I found out about the sand shortage, I was just like, you've got to be fucking kidding me. We're running out of sand. We're running out of sand. Like, we're gonna go to Mars. We're going to go to Mars, and we're going to colonize Mars and terraform Mars, and then we'll have a whole new civilization. That's the future of humanity, being on Mars. Oh, we're out of sand? Oh. Like, fuck off. Like, fuck right off. From what I've seen, the idea that there's less personal freedom in your day-to-day life in China is largely a myth. If anything, it may be the opposite. There's much less police presence than the U.S. Like, look, I've always said it again and again. You can't govern. You can't govern at 1.6 billion people through like a totalitarian, draconian, fear-based, we're going to spread violence and kick in doors and we're going to... You can't. You can't. Like, you can't. How do you do it? Can you imagine if they tried? Can you imagine if that was the type of civilization China actually was? That if people were walking around being all scared and oh my god, and like, oh, you gotta go through checkpoint after checkpoint after checkpoint, oh my goodness, So it's 1.6 billion people who have had a revolution not that long ago, if you recall. Like, there's no way that you can govern that kind of a population through this sort of made up, like, idea of draconian totalitarian control. It just is, like, incomprehensible. It requires you to have a cartoonish vision of the Chinese, which most Americans do. For sure, our society needs structure. I'm not sure how exactly. Right now, the West, yep, it is chaos. It doesn't make sense. Yep, and like, because the rules that exist in the West exist for one reason only. They exist to increase profits for the corporate class. That's the only reason any rule exists, right? If the rule does not directly increase profits for the corporate class, it does not exist. Very straightforwardly. And so if you live in a society that worships money this way, right, that places the sovereignty of its own citizens, that places the sovereignty of its own country, national security, if it places above all else, it places accruing profit, right? If that's what it's done, then all of its rules will be incomprehensible. All of its rules will be illegitimate. Like, you don't need to follow the rules of fucking Darth Vader or Voldemort, right? There's no law that Voldemort can pass that you have to go, well, that's the rule that Voldemort's passed, and so we gotta follow that rule because Voldemort passed it. Like, get fucked. Like, the laws and the rules that exist in the West are all incomprehensible, right? If we find any that make any sense whatsoever, it's usually because groups of people have died and fought and spilt their blood in order to force the death cult to actually write down people should have food, right? Like, that's the history of the West. That any gains we have are fought with blood and sweat and tears. That there's no such thing as an institution in the West that exists to look at a problem that exists in the society and go, how do we solve this problem for the citizens, right? The question is always, how can we make the most amount of money from this? That's always the question. And the justification for that is, through the earning of profits for ourselves, that wealth will trickle down and thereby everyone will improve. It's always been their justification. It's completely fake. It's totally false, right? Which is why we're living in this collapsed society that just exists in chaos. And so when you see any of these guys stand up and be like, we're going to pass regulation, you know it's bullshit. Instantly you know it's bullshit. Because they're not interested in passing regulation to improve your life, right? There's all kinds of things that we could be doing right now to improve people's lives. Very straightforward shit. Very easy shit. We're in the middle of a climate catastrophe. Nationalize the fossil fuel industry, right? Oh, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. Start transferring houses away from the psychopath class. Really basic, straightforward shit. Really basic, straightforward shit. We're not doing any of it. Why? Because that doesn't increase profits, right? And so when we live in a society where all of the rules are illegitimate simply by the force of their existence, right, to improve profits for psychos, right, then you take a look at another country that actually passes laws for the benefit of the citizenry, right, and you go, how authoritarian? Laws that actually help people, that's not improving profit margins for CEOs. That's not improving profit margins for investors who sit around and do nothing valuable whatsoever. Illegitimate. Authoritarian. That's entirely what they do. That's completely what they do. Right? You can take a look at just like over and over again, you get article after article after article talking about China and its authoritarian rule. And when you actually look at what they're saying, you're like, oh, they passed a rule that made it harder for real clear example. Oh, they nationalized the education system. Oh, so they took all of the private schools that existed in China and they nationalized them and created one public school system in China so that everyone would have access to the same level and quality of education all throughout China. Well, if you're a capitalist or an investor, it's a disaster for you because you don't get to exploit people anymore, right? You don't get to be a worthless middleman inserting yourself in a process you don't belong to extract the maximum amount of wealth by selling something that should be nationalized in the first place. And so it's authoritarian. That's the system. That's how it works. If you're not getting something for free from doing nothing other than exploiting people, then it's authoritarian. Ugh. You guys are talking. I have to say, Journal Daniel Dumbrill has really changed my mind on China. I remember him saying that Chinese citizens felt they were freer in mainland China. Look, can I tell you the number one thing that has completely changed my mind about China generally? And it was really, really easy, right? China, walk around. All of this stuff. Like, I'm gonna turn that right off. Like, you don't need to like like, you don't need to read articles and have big intellectual debates and like any of that kind of stuff. Like, there's video after video after video after video after video after video after video of people just walking around these places, right? Like, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I cannot be convinced that this is some kind of horrible society just because of this. I can't. No one can sit down in front of me and tell me that China is doing something dark and evil and sinister and communism is this big horrible problem that we need to look at. What? No. Like, no. All you have to do to be convinced, like, you don't need to fall in love with China, right? That's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm not saying, like, this is going to make you fall in love with China. But there's no possible way to watch people walk around the streets of China, right? Going into the market districts, right? This is clearly this is one of the more touristy ones. Let's pick a less touristy one even, right? Let's you know what, man? Let's go to the Forbidden City. Right? Let's just fucking go to the Forbidden City. Isn't that great? Got some history in here, right? No one is ever going to convince me at all that these people are living in like a totalitarian, like everything's scared and everything's forced and let's just go to Shanghai. Here you go. Straight up, just walk around Shanghai. This is Shanghai. Like, where's the oppression? Where's the suppression? Where am I supposed to believe that these people are living in this hellish totalitarian dictatorship? Where is it then? right? You can spend hours, and I have spent hours on this channel, walking around with this guy the streets of China. You can watch people walk around Tibet. You can watch people walk around Xinjiang. You can watch people walk around all of these places. Where is the oppression? Where is it? Oh, you can't see it. You can't see it. It must be invisible then, right? It must be another one of these just Chinese people looking at one another and psychically telepathing their thoughts, right? The oppression must just exist in the mind. And it's embarrassing. Spend 10 minutes in Shanghai. Walk around the city. Just do it. It reminds me so much of like when I said I was going to move to Toronto, right, from my small town, Manitoba. Everybody around me was like, oh, careful, it's a big city, right, dangerous kind of stuff. I was in Toronto for 5 minutes when I realized this place is fine. It's completely safe. All of the people back home were just small town hicks who are afraid of the big city because it's big and they don't understand it, right? And then the second you actually get to the city, you might feel overwhelmed, right? That's fine, but you can't say it's not safe, right? Like the streets are clean, you walk around, everything's fine. There's people around all the time, right? This looks like Toronto. If you're actually trying to convince me that China is this big, scary place, well, where is it? It's just kind of embarrassing, honestly. It's just this xenophobic, close-minded hickness that can be dispelled with just like a banal walk-around video. How could you possibly look at this and be like, those Chinese, they're well, that totalitarian dictator. Shut up. Like, grow up. Hey. Sure, there's less economic freedom for big corporation entrepreneurs. Yeah, less slavery, right? So, like, less freedom to have slaves, right? So, seems fine. But generally, the little guy can just live their life without much interference. You can have your own small business, etc. Yeah. Right? Because the buck doesn't stop at the oligarch class, right? Like here, the buck stops with the oligarchs. So if the regulation's not working for the oligarchs, they get rid of it. If the rules aren't working for the oligarchs, they get rid of it. If the oligarchs do something and it destroys the society and collapses the economy and lays a bunch of people off and destroys a bunch of people's lives, well, the oligarchs get a bailout from us. Right? That's how the system is structured. In China, if the capitalists that exist in the society do that kind of stuff, the Chinese government not only says, go fuck yourself, they incarcerate, arrest, and execute them. Like, the buck does not stop with the oligarch class in China. There is no oligarch class in China. There are wealthy billionaires, right? But their power is completely clamped down upon. And the Chinese government views them as antagonistic. It doesn't look at them and say, oh, we need to serve you. Please lobby me. Lobby me. Right? The Chinese government views lobbying as corruption. If you attempt to bribe people, you are purged from the party. Like, it's very straightforward shit. And it seems fine. Like, where's the catastrophe? Like, where's the fucking catastrophe? I will say that China, most security spending is found in Tibet and Uyghur region. I mean, that makes sense, though. Like, it makes sense that there would be security spending in Tibet and the Uyghur region, right? Like, let's just look at the map. Like, it makes all the sense in the world. So we go down here where Tibet is here, right? Xinjiang here. So we know that the real power center of China is on the coast, Shanghai, right? These are the big trading centers. China's doing everything it can to expand and get that wealth out into the outer provinces, right? And to develop and improve this, right? The history between Tibet and Xinjiang, right? Well known here on the channel. But, like, Afghanistan causes a refugee crisis, right? And it's Iraq. This whole thing has created an enormous refugee crisis. And we keep talking about that refugee crisis in Europe, right? We over and over again, we talk about the refugee crisis in Europe. But for some reason, China's not allowed to have a refugee crisis of the same level in Xinjiang and Tibet. It's just not allowed to happen, right? It simply can't possibly be the fact that as we blow up Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Oman, right? As there's a revolution in fucking Kazakhstan, right? As we bomb people in Pakistan, right? As we continuously interfere all around the region, it can't possibly be the case that the same kind of refugee crisis that exists in Europe also exists in Xinjiang and Tibet. Can't possibly be the case, right? And if China responds to this rising external threat of organizations like the Eastern Turkmenistan Islamic Movement or any of this kind of stuff with increasing security, it's a dynamite! Like, shut up. Like, it's just so fucking annoying. Like, it is. It's gotten annoying. Like, fucking, they're literally building walls and concentration camps along the Mexican border, right? And we're all supposed to take seriously that the way the Chinese are dealing with this wave of refugees in their borders is somehow worse than what the Americans are doing, which is obviously like walls, prisons, concentration camps, fueling organizations like ICE in order to kick in people's door and spread terrorism throughout the United States in order to fill up these fucking concentration camps even more, right? Like, bleh. Of course they've increased security spending there. That's where the crisis is. I think there's even less bureaucracy and red tape than in the West for like small business entrepreneurs and stuff. You're generally left to live your own life in peace, so long as you obey the law. Yeah. The entrances to the hollow earth are at the poles. Thanks, Major. Thanks, Major. Thanks for infusing the conversation with a little bit of humor. We needed a little bit of humor today, right? Because we all know the Earth is hollow, guys. Come on. This is just a big spaceship, right? This is all a big spaceship. I had a libertarian today. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear this. I'm already sorry. I'm sorry that you were talking to a libertarian. Trying to argue with me that Reaganomics and trickle-down economics are not the same. Wah, 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 wah. Oh, look, a libertarian that doesn't know what he's talking about. There are problems in China, yeah, as there are anywhere else, but they tend to be economic. Things like income disparity, working and living conditions in big cities, undeveloped rural areas, so on. Well, I mean, and of course, every place has problems, right? The difference is that China is attempting to resolve those problems and understands that resolving these problems takes time, effort, right? You don't just do it overnight. You have to decide to do it and make plans to do it. And it seems like they're constantly facing those issues head on and at least attempting to do something about them, right? And you can have debates about whether or not what they're doing is appropriate. Like, was the one-child policy a success, right? That's something that I think is really worthy of critique and really worthy of discussion. That China moved forward with a one-child policy. Well, it created a lot of problems for them. And did it actually work? Was it actually a successful thing? Should they have focused on it? Or was it a bit heavy-handed, right? This could have been what, like, to me, the one-child policy is one of these moments where I think people can legitimately say that seems like a pretty big overreach. That seems like a pretty big misstep, and but at the same time, shows you that what the Chinese government is willing to do to face what it considers to be major crises, right? Like a one-child policy is an enormous. Like, can you imagine? What do you think would happen here in America if the government said only one child, right? People would start having kids in spite People would be like, I'm going to have 1,000 children. Right? They would just do it to fucking spite the government. What precisely would be the difference between Reaganomics and trickle-down theory? Yeah. If you want to see a country that will be underwater, sea levels, yeah, look at Bangladesh. For sure, dude. Remember, John, if the West does something like that, it's democracy. But if a non-Western country does it, it's authoritarian, yeah. And China knows this, and they explicitly make plans to address these things under slogans like common prosperity, moderately prosperous society in all respects, etc. Wow, I'm moving. Are you moving to the hollow earth? You gonna go to the center? I will say I really hate the Chinese censorship. For example, they remove blood from animes, or they will change movie scenes for X reasons. This is an interesting conversation to have about China, is that they are still fairly conservative socially. And I don't feel like I am in a position to actually critique it. Especially as I get older, I am starting to see that our own cultures, it's no longer an acceptance of violence, but rather a glorification of violence. That when we play like video games like Mortal Kombat or Doom or something, right? Like when you used to play these games, there was blood, right? Like you'd shoot a guy, he would bleed and fall over, right? And then you'd move on. Mortal Kombat, you like punch a guy and some blood would come off or something, right? And fatalities were like you decapitated him, right? Oh, he's decapitated, blood, right? And so the violence was there, and we accepted the violence. And there was a pushback of sorts, right? You remember Hillary Clinton being like, and people trying to blame school shootings and shooters for on video game violence and all of this. Which I always thought, even as a kid, I was like, that's stupid, right? That feels stupid. But now it has gotten to a place where it's not violence. It's not simply accepting violence. It's it's glorification of violence. It's not accepting that, oh yeah, you're a guy with a gun and you're shooting someone and that's violent and there's blood, right? Now it's like you're reveling in it. It's not enough to like shoot the guy and move on and find somebody else and to pursue an objective. Now you gotta like grab the guy and split his skull in half and like drench yourself in his blood, right? And then take his spine and stab another guy in the eye with it and just like drive it in, you know? Like it's this, I can't think of a better word than just glorification that I find, as someone who plays these games, as somebody who has played a lot of video games and who defended the culture and defended against this accusation that video game violence is causing problems. Well, I am actually concerned about where it's gone now. Like I can't play these games anymore. You know? I start playing the new Mortal Kombat. I have the new Mortal Kombat. I've played it. I played it quite a bit, in fact. I was doing like online play and shit. Right? I was having a great time, but like, you know, you see this grotesque freak show. Right? And that is what it is. It's like this grotesque freak show over and over and over again, and you just start to realize, man, I am taking psychic damage here watching this. It's exhausting in a way. Like I can't watch the John Wick films because they exhaust me. I get exhausted by how over the top and grotesque they are. And like I can't play Doom. And I actually lament this. I'm actually like kind of upset about this one. I was really looking forward to the new Doom, and I started playing it, and after about 2 hours I couldn't do it anymore because it was just too grotesque and horrific and horrible. And I really started to ask myself, like, what is it I'm engaging in here? What is it that I'm doing? Like, I'm not trying to, like, pursue a goal or an objective or even enjoy, like, solid gameplay. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be, like, giggling like a schoolgirl while bathing in demon blood, you know? It just felt fucking odd, and I felt weird about it. I can't do it anymore. And so if a culture like China wants to ban blood from animes, or change things, or go at it, I mean, I think, okay, yeah, like I don't think I actually have a problem with that anymore. Like I feel like when I was younger, like a teenager and in my 20s, I would have had a bigger problem with it. But as I age more and more, it just seems unnecessary more than anything. Like I lament this in many ways, that there are things that I would like to enjoy. Like I would like to continue playing Mortal Kombat. I enjoy these games. I think they're over the top on purpose, and they become so to a level where it's silliness. But it's just like I can't engage in it because of this. Like how often do I want to see a guy like have his testicles exploded in slow motion X-ray? You know, not that often. Not that often. And yeah. Prove to me it's not all AI generated propaganda. They have the technology. What, this? Oh, that hurts my heart, methane. Because it's like, it is exactly something that these fucking hogs would say. Okay, ad break, inserting ad. By the way, why are you playing video today? Eric, I have figured out how to change my sound thing. This was always safe. Look, Eric, the reason why I don't like playing videos was twofold. One, I was having audio concerns, so I've resolved the audio concern. And then two was that some of the videos that I was playing was getting my channel scrubbed. This video is fine to play, and I know it's fine to play, and so I'm playing it. And for like a brief window of time, I was like, no video whatsoever to avoid all of these problems. But now I'm starting to resolve the problems. And this is a safe video, so. Every nation has its cultural preferences. There are countries with much heavier censorship of violent or sexual themes. Yeah, not too long ago, the West was quite conservative. Yeah, I mean, cultures change and shift. And like, does it, I think, and it also pays to remember that like, China has not undergone the same kind of sexual revolutions that have swept throughout the West. Which I'm not trying to say that they're homophobic or that they've got these like big negative movements. I think maybe that's really what it is, you know. Like I feel like if you're gay in China, although I have talked to people who said that like being gay in China was like. They couldn't be there. They couldn't live in China and be gay. And, I mean, I've talked directly to those people, so I can't deny that that exists. So, China has not gone through, like, a sexual revolution in this regard. But at the same time, there are people in China and Chinese media who are openly gay, right? And so, honestly, I don't know enough about that particular conversation to speak credibly, I think. Take, for instance, the notorious online video game ban we hear so much about Western media. That was lobbied for by parents worried their children were neglecting their school studies. Just evidence that cringy boomer parents exist in every country. Well, and also, it is an interesting question, right? Like, all of this digital shit, like, do we actually think it's helping? You know? Like, it's novel. It's interesting. It captures our attention, right? But is it actually useful? Is it actually helping us? Do we actually feel like our society is better with it, right? And I don't know. I can respect somebody wanting to sit down and actually like think about those things. You know, is it good for a 10-year-old kid to just play Mario Kart for 8 hours a day? Is it good for like? I think about my own upbringing. Like, is it good that I was playing Mortal Kombat when I was 12? Is that good? Right? Is that beneficial somehow? And if it is, right? Well, how? And should we maybe think about how to encourage the more positive aspects of it? You know, I just feel like a lot of this stuff got made and dropped on us, and everybody just kind of was like, it's enough that people buy it, you know, like that's really the line that seems to exist in the West. That like if I make it and someone buys it, it is good, and there's no pausing and asking like, is it though? Like we tolerate all kinds of things in society that we call them vices. Like, we know they're not necessarily good, right? Like, but they exist. Like alcohol, right? We tolerate the existence of alcohol, and we know what happens if you attempt to take alcohol away from people, right? You just create a black market, you create a mafia who immediately makes millions of dollars because people want alcohol and are going to get it, right? So it's not enough to say, I made this thing and people buy it, therefore it's good. We know that's not true. And yet it is how our society works, that we just keep creating these digital toys and sending them out into the world and just saying, yeah, this is it. We're changing the world. We're doing it, right? And it's just like, it's, is it good? Is it helping us? Should we maybe have actual conversations about this? And so you look at a society like China, who does have actual conversations about this, and is actually interested in having a discussion about whether or not things are beneficial or positive, right? And authoritarian, they're actually talking. Anemone, good to see you. Wayne Virgo. Don't know if I've ever seen you here, man. Good to see you. Hope you're here to contribute in a beautiful way. Good evening to you, Anemone. Always a pleasure. More like base boomer parents. I have mixed feelings about culture because part of me don't want to interfere with other people, yet at the same time, culture can be detrimental to others. For example, in China, they're still very much conservative in their view of the LGBTQ. In some ways, the West is far more ahead of China. I don't like the lack of negative liberties rights. Yeah, China is not even the most conservative place on earth, but so many fucking eyes are fixated on them, nitpicking this and that. Yeah, I think that's more or less what it is. Yeah, and Ligandy is just spitting truth. The Western social movements that boosted LGBTQ plus rights in the West is a luxury afforded to them through the plundering of the third world. Yeah. Sierra Strife, you good to see you. I don't play video games unless you can kill a hooker in them. Grand Theft Auto 5. I can't play Grand Theft Auto 5 either. I just find the characters to be so, like, horrible. They're just so horrible. Yeah. The fatalities are pretty grotesque and cartoonish. Although, I still love watching Evo, especially when Sonic Fox is in it. Dude, Sonic Fox, for those of you who don't know, Sonic Fox is like, the guy for Mortal Kombat. Like, he was like, what, the champion like 6 times running. I think he like retired to become a coach because he was just so dominant that people were starting to like not want to play against him. Yeah, there's this like legendary series that he played where he plays for the longest time. The reason why he's Sonic Fox, right? So he's wearing like a Sonic the Hedgehog hoodie, basically a hat, right? And he's in the finals of something, and he's losing. And there's this like pivotal game where if he loses this game, he's out. And he takes the hat off for the first time in his whole career, right? And then he just dominates completely. And it's like, it's legendary. It's complete. If you're a fan of this stuff, it's legendary. And here I am just like outright showing you guys how like fucking nerdy I am and how much I love video games and video game culture and getting involved in the tournaments and stuff, simultaneously saying like, have we gone too far? Have we gone too far with the violence? Like, where is there a line? Is there a moment when it's like, bleh, bleh. Space games, survival simulations, that's where I'm at these days, mostly like No Man's Sky. China has some strange requirements in games. I remember in WoW they didn't like exposed bones yet, skeletons, something like that. Yeah, Every culture is going to have their stuff, man. Every culture is going to have their stuff. And the glorification of violence, I can see why you wouldn't want that to be so imbued in your culture. Yeah, I can see that about Mortal Kombat. The violence is so gratuitous. The Doom, the violence makes sense as part of the style. For me, it's in the new Doom games, there's this effect where you shoot a guy, and instead of just going like, oh, and falling over, he blinks, and you're supposed to go up to him and do a glory kill. It's called a glory kill. And the glory kills are brutal. Like, that's where I'm just like, oof. Like, I just found myself actually playing the game and, like, having a good time, jumping around, being cool, right? Yeah, your chainsaw, all this kind of stuff. And then anytime any of these, and you're completely incentivized to do them because you get ammo and health, right? So if you want to be the best that you can be at the game, given the rule set, you've got to do these glory kills. That's how you get more ammo. It's how you get more health. And I just found myself every single time I did one of these, I looked away. And when I acknowledged that that's what I was doing, that's when I started to realize, yeah, I can't play this game. Like, if I'm not going to watch your game, like, if I'm not going to be engaged in it, and if I'm actively looking away because it's too... And that seems to be the point. Like, it just seems to be this point. I just didn't enjoy it. And I just found it to be, like, ugh, too much. Too much. Wayne is your friend from real life. Hi, Wayne. Real life friends. That's beautiful. See, the channel grows. The channel grows. You bring in two friends, and they bring in two friends, and then they bring in two friends, and before we know it, we've taken over the internet. That's how we're doing it. One person at a time. Every culture needs to progress at their own pace. Yeah, the surest way to liberalize is to achieve economic stability, peace, and prosperity. And China is making progress on LGBTQ+. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that is right. I'd even almost be fine, and I was, if it sells, it's good, but the marketing propaganda has invaded culture and what should be news, media, and politics a few steps too far for me. Yeah, I see what you're saying with that, Methane. But I feel like what's happened is that our culture now creates problems and then sells you a product to solve the problem that they're creating. That's what I feel like happens most of the time. So, like, climate change. To me, it's become really obvious that, like, capitalism is generating climate change. It's doing it through burning fossil fuels, right? While selling us products that use fossil fuels, right? So they've sold us products that are generating climate change catastrophes, right? And the solution is stop using those products, right? So shift to something else. But that's not what we're going to do. Instead, we're going to sell carbon capture, right? We're going to sell some kind of product to solve the problem that we ourselves are creating, because we can't stop using the product because that would mean less profits for us. So it's about creating a new product so that you can keep doing the old thing while doing the new thing. Because they don't want you to actually quit. They don't want to actually solve the problem. They certainly don't want to solve the problem. They're not interested in that. They're interested in making money. I don't know about them retiring. They planned in Evo last year, but lost to Foxy Grandpa. Very nice. Callisto Protocol is looking sick, though. I don't know who Callisto Protocol is, or what that is. Welcome, Wayne. Only Doom game I liked was Doom 3, which every Doom fan says was not really a Doom game. It was slower, more of a horror. Yeah, I know the game you're talking about. I agree with you, though. I liked Doom 3. Yeah. Yeah, they focused on the dark immersive horror style. It was well done. It was well done. It just wasn't what people were looking for, I think. I think what people wanted was more like what's happening now, right? Fast-paced, more action-oriented, and they delivered instead, yeah, on the horror aspect of it a little bit better, which I think, yeah, which was nice, I disagree that it will require economic stable peace prosperity. You need a movement like feminism in the West to bring equal rights to these people, yet you see the Chinese government crushing such movements by making laws. I don't know enough about that, honestly. I mean that people are not going to have the time and energy for social movements when they're struggling to get enough to eat or dodging U.S. bombs. There is that. In many ways, the Frankfurt School allowed such conversation to be spread in the West, but in communist countries, you don't have such things. Not a fan of the whole Frankfurt School thing. To me, the whole philosophy is revisionist, anti-Marxist. Callisto Protocol was my line in the sand, honestly. As cool as it looks, I started questioning the violence in video games after seeing it. Yeah, I don't know anything about this Callisto Protocol thing, but, like, it just seems to me like if the point of your game is, like, the grotesque freak show of violence, like, it tends to... Yeah, it tends to go... I get a bit, like, about it. Because dissent in China is not the same as dissent here for the West. For China, it can be very well be a color revolution. Yeah, that Ligandese is really hitting on something here, right? Dissent in China is not the same as dissent in the West. For China, it can very well be a color revolution that destroys their country, like they did the USSR in 91. The collapse of the USSR was a humanitarian disaster. We live in a world with America KKK in it. Yeah, like that's absolutely the reality, right? Like that China is living in a reality where it has to constantly be wary of social movements that come up, right? Because there is such a thing as like a social movement that is organic, that has its roots in China and is concerned with Chinese society and improving Chinese society. But even then, the Chinese government needs to be quite leery because these movements can be infected by Westerners and can be, like, take a look at what happens with Falun Gong. I think this is a great thing to pivot to, right? Falun Gong, if you actually say what it is, right? Like, it's a religious cult that existed within China, right? That gets thrown out of China. Well, now you can see that Falun Gong has started to infect our own politics. Conservative leaders donate money to Falun Gong to publish bullshit articles in the Epoch Times. And, like, so clearly it was an organization that was attempting to infiltrate and influence the political life of the country that it was in, as it's currently doing now. And in China, that's a threat. That's a significant threat to them. Like it's and I mean, such things are not happening in America on that kind of a level because we have this, like, we have these terrorist organizations like the CIA and the FBI, right? Personally, I'm more worried about predatory monetization and gambling addiction aspects of modern games than the violent aspects. Oh yeah, that's another thing, right? Loot boxes, right? Loot boxes, microtransactions, right? They've become quite predatory. I just won't play those games anymore. It's simple as that. I've created hard lines for myself. It means that the new Diablo 4 game that's coming out, I'm just not going to buy. It'll be the first Blizzard game I don't buy. And it's just because, like, I'm over it. Like, I'm done with it. Like, fucking release a game. Like, just release a game. Yeah, the microtransaction stuff, absolutely toxic, and a perfect example of capitalism ruining what used to be an enjoyable but fairly harmless vice back in the day. Yeah, and you can see that with the release of a game like Elden Ring, right? You can see that you can still release a fully completed game. You can just release a game, it's done, here it is. You don't need microtransactions. You don't need all of this predatory garbage. Right? You can release a game that is completed and just say, here it is. And it'll be popular. People will like it. They'll play it. And with Elden Ring, people are declaring it a masterpiece. And it is, frankly. It is. So it's just like not a... the new Diablo, the Diablo Immortal. Yeah. No, it's brutal. It's fucking brutal. Uh-oh. Nova Scotia's calling it. You're right, Nova Scotia. You're right. Let's do the number draw. For those of you who don't know, oops. David Lynch. Oh, David Lynch Theater. Today's number is... Pick a number between 1 and 10, everybody. Today's number. We got a lot of sevens.
Here we go for today's number.
I'm going... What am I
It's
feeling?
August
What am I feeling?
15, 2022. 10 balls.
5.
Each
I'm
ball
feeling a 5.
has a number.
It's for sure a 5.
Numbers 1 through 10.
Yeah. Oh, me and Wayne. We're in it. We're here, Wayne. It's you and me together, at last.
Pick a
Pick
number.
a number. Here we go. Today's number
is
6. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Oh. It hurts so much more. It hurts so much more when it's a miss like that. When it's like, I said 5 and it was a 6. And even more than that. We had 2 7s were in the chat. We had 2 5s. A 4, an 8. We had like laid out a minefield. Perfectly placed. And he just snuck right through it. Fucking David Lynch. With his bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit, David Lynch. I shouldn't say that too loudly. I love David Lynch. You know, the thing about God is that he's gay. Can you explain that? No. Alright. Yeah, I know, right? Lynch be swerving. Lynch be swerving. Today we are complaining about inflation, but even with the slew of rebates in the Inflation Reduction Act, some Americans may look back at the cooling costs from the summer of 2022 as a bargain. Oh my god. It's always got to come back to just like, sure, the world is burning and is on fire, but money! Money's really gonna matter when your house light's on fire. Everyone's gonna really give a shit when the cities start burning down. Ha! Sure, Miami'll light up in flames. But think about the savings. Damn. Fucking Americans, man. They just drive me crazy. This encapsulates it, by the way, right? To the worker, sorry, we can't afford to raise wages with such inflation. To the customer, sorry, we regret that we must increase prices to match the inflation. To the public, society must cut services and infrastructure to stop inflation. To the 1%, another year of record profits. Like, what do you think's happening? Like, it doesn't take a genius to figure this out. And these fucking loser simps that are walking around being like, but they earned it. They earned it. They earned it. Are basically saying that you might as well be a fucking serial killer. Because every single time you get a kill, you earned it. Right? Like, it's no different. Like, if you're a slaver in the American South, right? You earned it. You earned it. You went and you captured a bunch of black people and you forced them to work on your farm. You earned it. It's the same exact logic, right? This whole earned it thing, as if you can ever earn the right to exploit people, or should be able to earn the right to exploit people. It's just this overtly demonic worldview that is evil. Like, it's just blatantly evil. Like it's like something that Hannibal Lecter would say in order to justify himself, and we're all supposed to just go along with it. We're like, I guess he did earn it. Yeah, I guess he did. And then when you look at who the wealthiest people are, most of them are born billionaires. Like somebody like David Thompson, who's the richest Canadian, right? He's fucking born a billionaire. Elon Musk was born a billionaire. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Earned it. Like, it's such a trash worldview. Yeah, the conservative that I was debating, I also went through how the real wage was stagnant for 40 years, and I bet they didn't care. Because at the end, they don't care. Right? They're not actually debating in good faith. Yeah. And how people are struggling to make ends meet. His response, yep. I've been making more and more and able to buy more and more stuff. Yeah, because he doesn't care about anything other than himself. Like, sorry, if you have empathy and compassion or are educated, you're not a conservative. It's just very straightforward. There's no such thing as an empathetic, compassionate conservative. Because the minute you actually get empathy and get compassion, you can no longer be a conservative. The minute you actually look at another human being who exists in the world who is having a tough go of it and think something other than, well, fuck them, they should do better, just like I do, right? If you think, oh, that's an unfortunate situation he's going in, we should improve the world and improve the situation for that person, you can't be a conservative anymore. Even though doing just that would actually improve your society in serious ways. Like, being a conservative in an apocalypse is just being like a cultist for a death cult. That's all it is, right? You're standing around literally saying that the apocalypse is upon us and I cannot wait. Like, you're just a member of a fucking death cult. It's shocking. The right wing still keeps insisting the prices are high because there aren't enough oil pipelines and oil rigs being built. Yeah, they'll use any excuse that they can make to continue the apocalypse. Which seems to be the point, by the way. Like, it just seems to be that it's like going beyond profits, and now it really is just like, we cannot wait to destroy this place. It just does seem like these guys have adopted the ethos of a death cult. And we just got to destroy more native lands, poison the earth more because record fossil fuel corporation profits are not enough. Yeah, I mean, like, I really am starting to speculate that it's going beyond profits. That they know what they're doing is generating an apocalypse and they're fine with it. The only thing that I can think, and this is just a theory, right? But I think it's actually accurate, is that these people are so narcissistic, they're so disconnected from reality. They're so disconnected from reality, and they're so disconnected from what reality actually is, right? They consider themselves the main character. You are an NPC. And there is only NPCs and them, the main character. And maybe they have bestowed upon someone else a slightly higher rank. But they're not the main character. They're a supporting character. I'm the main character. And if you're living your life that way, the way that Musk and Gates and Bezos and all these guys live their lives, believing that they're the main character, then, well, it's one of the most abominable things that can happen to the main character is that they die. Well, the structure of reality kills these people, right? That's one of the great benefits of the way reality is structured, is that it inevitably kills these psychopaths, just like the rest of us. And so if you're one of these narcissistic psychos who believes that existence itself exists only for my benefit, because I'm the main character, right? Well, oh, it's killing me? Then I have every reason to kill it back, right? If only as an act of final vengeance, as only as a way to strike back against the system. How dare the system strike me down? Does it not know or understand that it exists exclusively and only for my benefit? And that killing me is the greatest sin that could be perpetuated in this plane of reality? And so I, in righteous fury, will strike back against it and destroy all that lays before me and forward in all civilization. And if that means all of these NPCs and supporting characters are going to be absolutely blown away and destroyed, who cares? They only ever existed for me. Like, I 100% think that these people are this narcissistic, are this disconnected from reality, are this psychopathic. And that's the reason why they're doing it, right? Because if you go to them and say, like, don't you care about future generations? The answer is no. They don't care about future generations. They care about their own life. They care about their own pursuits, right? And if their own pursuits are going to be cut off because the way life works, that they will die, then they will destroy it back. And they'll see that as an act of total righteousness. Because I'm the only thing that matters. What we nowadays call main character syndrome used to just be called solipsism by those philosopher nerds back in the day. Let's take a look at that word, shall we? Solipsism. I like this. The view or theory that the self is all that can be known to exist. I am the only mind that exists. Reality is only in my mind. Yikes. Philosophical idea that one's mind is sure to exist. As an epistemological position, solipsism holds the knowledge of anything outside one's own mind is unsure. The external world and other minds cannot be known and might not exist outside the mind. I think I agree with you, Sarah Streffy. I don't think they're completely synonymous. But I definitely see where you're coming from with this. I'm just brushing up on it right in front of you guys. Like, this metaphysical solipsists maintain that the self is the only existing reality and that all other realities, including the external world and other persons, are representations of that self and have no independent existence. I don't know, actually. I might recant that. It sounds about right. There are several versions of metaphysical solipsism, such as Carter Hare's egocentric presenceism, in which other people are conscious, but their experiences are similar, are simply not present. Yeah, like, feels about right. For all we know, this could be an actual individual training simulation, our minds just connected to a computer, so we could learn how to behave for when we're finally unplugged. Methane. God damn it, man. I all of these weird little thought experiments of like what this place could be or what it is or any of that kind of stuff, I don't think any of it is helpful. I gotta tell you. I really do think like it is better for us to just accept that we are part of a grand system that is and simply live within that system peacefully, or as peacefully as we can. Seems to be the only thing that makes sense to me. Like the idea that after we die, then, you know, I just am like, none of it seems to be particularly helpful. Solipsism does have a point worth contemplating, though, because you can't step outside your five senses and know what the objective world is, or if exists. I mean, one of the things I think about all the time, like, we don't know anything about reality. Like, we pretend like we're super smart, but we're not. We know barely anything about it. And the things that we do know are limited so dramatically to, as you say, our senses, right? Like, and we know, like, for example, we know that there are many more color spectrums, right, that we're simply not seeing, that we're just not a part of. And how do we know that? Because there are animals with much more conal arrays than we have, right? And why would those conal arrays exist if not to see something that's there that we aren't present with, that we're not a part of? And sometimes I like to think, like, wouldn't it be cool if, this is just my creative brain, wouldn't it be cool if the UFO sightings that we were seeing were not aliens at all, but were in fact some kind of creature that has always existed in our atmosphere that we can only now even capture because we've got better instruments, or that more carbon is in the atmosphere now, and so they're becoming more visible, right? So there could be these, like, not interdimensional per se, but there could be these types of creatures that exist within a spectrum that we simply can't perceive. And as things change slightly, we are beginning to find ways to perceive them. And so rather than it being like UFOs from another planet or any of that kind of stuff, it's literally just like a sky whale, you know? I think that would be fucking awesome. If we just finally, like, did some, like, robust research and found out that, like, yeah, there's these fucking sky whales. They just live in the atmosphere, and they've always been there, near as we can tell, and they're always around. No thanks, invisible monsters are terrifying. Yeah. Yeah, now Anemone is opening it up to something else, right? Which is like, oh, so if there are like invisible sky whales, then couldn't there be like an invisible creature in this space with me right now? Turns out that when you actually do like a cleansing with sage, it is actually chasing these like invisible creatures away, right? Well, like there's this phenomenon that happens to people. Sleep paralysis. You guys heard about this? Let's terrorize Anemone. Sleep paralysis demon. So it's an extremely well-known phenomenon that definitely exists. That we just like talk about, like it's just like, yeah, you know, the sleep paralysis demon, you know. Like we don't fucking go any deeper than this, right? A woman in her late 50s, every night she would fall asleep and then dream she was unable to move. Her husband was coming into her room and trying to attack her. Helpless, she could neither move nor cry out. Researchers believe sleep paralysis is caused by a disturbed rapid eye movement cycle. They don't know why it happens. Oh, you've had sleep paralysis. Oh, so did Major. Oh, CR Strifey too. Shit, really? I've never had this. And I gotta tell you, from what everybody says, I hope it never happens. Please, sleep paralysis demon. Please, I beseech thee. Leave me be. Leave me be. Yeah. What can you do? Skip the nap. Nappers seem more prone to sleep paralysis than non-nappers. Get as much sleep as possible. Don't sleep on your back. Weird one. Weird one. I wonder if there is a good picture of the sleep paralysis demon. Yeah. Yeah, sleep paralysis demons. Have you seen the movie The Invisible Man? Literally a billionaire stalker ex puts an invisibility suit to mess with his ex-girl. Exactly. That's the kind of shit that they would do. Like, these guys aren't gonna, like, use these sorts of powers to help us. It's not how they roll. You fucking become aware at some point that you are asleep, and when you cry out in your dream, you can feel your mouth move, or when you shake, you can feel your whole body jerk, but you can't wake up. Bro. I think I had exploding head syndrome a few times. Glad I never got to go full on sleep paralysis. That never sounded like fun. I did have a dream where I felt pain, though. Ugh. Yeah, like dreams, man. Dreams are fucked up, eh? I actually have a dream dictionary somewhere. And I love going through it. If I have a dream I actually remember, I love going through it. Deciphering the symbols in my dreams. So, you know things are starting to get a little fucked when the Globe and Mail are actually publishing articles like this. The Globe and Mail is owned by the richest Canadian, right? David Thompson. And so, is David Thompson starting to get a little, like, about all this? I hope so. I fucking really actually hope so. Because, like, our liberal government's doing fuck all. Right? It's doing fucking nothing for us. Well, and solipsism, it sounds like the type of philosophy that, like, Hannibal Lecter would make. That's what it sounds like. It sounds to me like there was some psychopath who got into the philosophical departments and started to come up with philosophical ideas to justify his own psychopathy. No one exists but me. It sounds pretty psychotic, frankly. Like, the only thing that exists is what I perceive and what I feel and what I think, and all is just a projection of me. Like, how is this anything other than an admission that you think you're God? Right? Like, yikes, bro. Like, yikes. That the only type, like, that person over there. What a great way to live in a reality and justify a reality that lets you treat everyone around you like a tool and an object, right? What a perfect way to do it. You've created a philosophy of thought, It's solipsism, you see. I've created, there's this idea that only the self can be sure to exist, and everyone's a projection of that. Like, what a perfect way to treat your waitress like garbage. What a perfect way to just say, oh, the workers that are slaving away in the mines, they're just projections of myself anyway, so. Yeah. Sounds like how the average billionaire thinks, to be honest. Yeah. Define healthy environment, please. Good question. Good question. Respecting Canadians' right... Hold on. The historic move by the UN establishes obligations that governments must fulfill and empowers people with a set of tools they can use to hold governments accountable. Canada is not just a UN member, it's a country for which the environment and human rights sits high on any political agenda. Certainly, the environment and human rights, convincing people that they care about those things, sits high on the political agenda. Not doing anything about it, but definitely trying to convince people that they care. Respecting Canadian rights to a healthy environment means expanding well beyond Canada's current efforts to protect 25% of its lands and waters in order to safeguard its rich biodiversity of plants and animals. I love it, all right? Well beyond Canada's current efforts to protect 25%. Isn't that nice to know? Isn't it nice to know that our current efforts are basically just like, yeah, we'll save 25% of this. Yeah, 25% of this is fine. We can protect that. That's fine. Like, get fucked, right? First, ensuring a healthy environment for Canadians means also choosing to protect areas on land and in the water based not only on whether they contain endangered species or ecosystems, but whether they contribute to people's lives and well-being. One would assume that clean water would do that. This can be by helping pollinate our crops, clean our water, mitigate climate change, and maintain clean and beautiful sites where we can live. Because the nature that provides these crucial ecosystems of service overlaps only partially with the places that are crucial for endangered species and ecosystems. This means going beyond 25% by 2025, and even beyond 30% by 2030. Like, you would assume that the government, that any elected institution would be interested in protecting 100% of the land that they have dominion over, right? One would assume that oh yeah, we're gonna make sure that there aren't big gigantic oil spills across all of Canada. So what this means, by the way, and what this reveals, is that when the Canadian government stands up and says we're going to fulfill our obligations to all of Canada, what they mean is 25% of Canada, right? That's what they mean. That the 75% of Canada that we're not interested in protecting, we're not interested in defending, we're not interested in improving, that can all get sold to billionaires who will just rip it up and destroy it. But the 25%, that'll remain pristine and completely intact. Special needs Christian rapper. That is an extremely specific name. What up, God, you guys? Good to see you, bud. Hope you're here to contribute in a beautiful way. Dude, special needs Christian rapper? I love it. Like, I hope you do the sickest raps of my life. Good to see you, bud. Good to see you. Got a lot of new people in here today. I'm so excited by it. Good opportunity. Like, share, subscribe. Good opportunity. Sorry about this. Ad break. Hey, there's a new person in the chat. Ad break. Sorry about that. I don't like doing it, but I also do like money. You know what? That's not true. I don't like money. I need money. I need money to live. Good opportunity to say, hey, if you want to be part of my Patreon, I got a Patreon in the description. Even $1 would help. If you're only donating $1, maybe make it $2, right? If you're donating $2, maybe make it $3. Every little tiny bit helps. Thank you very much. I would like to pay rent. God bless you. All right. There's so much evidence that direct experience of nature is vital for our well-being that physicians are beginning to advocate for prescriptions of time in nature. There's even research showing enjoyment of nature is tied to identity and belonging for new migrants. To deliver these benefits, nature protection needs to be scaled up throughout cities in a way that makes restorative experience in nature accessible to all. No shit, guys. A bunch of fucking monkeys that learned how to talk and use guns like being in nature. Who fucking knew? Right? Who knew? You mean we enjoy being in the very system that generated us? No fucking shit. Third, we need to greatly decrease the environmental footprint of our food systems, which are major contributors to the climate crisis and emerging zoonotic diseases. Yeah. Ensuring the right to a healthy environment in Canada could trigger changes that lead to sustainable farming. For example, farm management practices include reduced tillage, increased crop rotations, and adding cover crops are considered climate smart and could sequester more carbon in agricultural soils, reduce emissions of nitrous oxide, and limit nutrient losses that cause water pollution. Methane emissions from livestock could be reduced through shifting animal feeding strategies. Overfish species could be enabled to recover through reduced catches and increased habitat protection. All of this shit's like super great, right? None of it's actually happening. Like, take the big kerfuffle that's happening over Trudeau. You guys got to reduce fertilizers. You got to reduce how many fertilizers you're using by 25%. And this is, of course, causing the Conservatives to lose their mind. Oh, this is so draconian, and it's exactly what the communist Trudeau would do. And this is going to bankrupt farmers, and the farmers are getting together and being like, oh, the Dutch had a farming revolution, and we're going to blah, blah. Yeah, the program that Trudeau is introducing, this reducing of fertilizer usage, in this reduction of fertilizer usage, it's voluntary, right? So if doing so would bankrupt your business, don't do it. It's voluntary, right? So all of the kerfuffle that everybody's kicking up about it, and incidentally, it goes the other way too, right? Like Trudeau's trying to pretend like he's like, we care about the environment, we're pushing forward on this idea, so we're going to do a voluntary. Get fucked, everybody. Special needs Christian rapper. In your country, are you a Democrat or a Republican? I'm a Canadian, first of all, so we don't have Democrats or Republicans. I am in Canada. There is the Liberal Party, which would be like the Democratic Party in America. And then we also have a Conservative Party, which is closer to Republican, but not Republican. And then we also have like a slightly to the left party called the New Democratic Party, the NDP. I am neither of these. I'm none of these. Because I think that they all work on behalf of capitalism. And that capitalism itself is a failed system that must be abandoned as swiftly as possible. I'm a communist, right? And that hence the name, the Canadian Commie, right? I genuinely believe that the political system in America is primarily theatrical. That any actual politics that occurs is a byproduct of the system, not the purpose of the system. That American politics has more in common with WWE wrestling than it does with actual political systems or political happenings. And so I don't tend to, like Trump's invasion of Mar-a-Lago, or the FBI's invasion of Mar-a-Lago, right? That people made a lot of hay about that, and people will make a lot of hay about that for a long time, right? Especially people who are Trump supporters. And Democrats obviously go against it. I don't bother reporting on it because I don't see the event as consequential. I don't think it matters, right? It's not an important historical event. It doesn't really have a bearing on politics. It's definitely a big theatrical event, right? But the reality is, I'll call you Christian. How about that? Like, the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States are allies, right? They work exclusively for the benefit of a corporate power structure, of an ownership class, right? And so the choice you're given in America is a choice between kind of a smiling, pride flag waving fascist, or just a straight up fascist, right? That's really the choice that you're given. Both of them will sell you to owners. One of them will say, we support your right to be LGBTQ and black and whatever minority group or however you want to identify or any of that, but show up to work on time. Do the work for us while we don't do anything of consequence, right? And that's the relationship that exists between the populace and the political system, if you want to call it that, in America. That the only time that anything actually happens for the benefit of the society, and this is true whether it's Democrat or Republican, is if the people gather en masse and force the government and force the politicians to actually implement change in meaningful ways. Like when FDR put in the New Deal, he didn't do it out of the goodness of his heart. He did it because there was thousands and thousands of people outside his front door waving communist signs and saying revolution, right? When Nixon put in the Environmental Protections Act, right, he didn't do so because he cares about the environment and because he's a good Christian. He did so because there were thousands and thousands of people outside his door, right? And now we're in the midst of a literal apocalypse. Like, the apocalypse is upon us. And instead of surrounding the halls of power, going and threatening revolution and telling these people to do something about it or be washed away, we're all just going to work. It's pretty astounding, in fact. Like, it's pretty astounding, if you ask me. And so, when you ask me, am I a Republican or a Democrat, my response is neither. I don't buy into the death cult. This whole idea of just go vote is childish. Just go vote for the death cult as it continues to sell you to a system of death that's actively attempting to betray not only you, but every future generation. No thanks. 0% support from me on that. So get involved with your local socialists and communists. Get involved with local protest movements. Get involved with people who are actually attempting to challenge the system directly, and because voting is pointless. There's no reason to do it in America. All it does is legitimize a system that has no legitimacy. They treated Trump with kids' gloves compared to how they do raids on the average citizen. Well, he wasn't even there, right? Fuck the FBI, fuck Donald Trump. We communists have no dog in this particular fight. Yeah, let them tear each other apart. Like, the FBI is a terrorist organization that operates for its own interests, right? Like, I'm sure that they raided Donald Trump to find a piece of find something that they can use against him at the time they need to, right? Like, honestly, like, my feeling on the raid is actually that the FBI just wants to find some information so that when Donald Trump becomes the leader of the country again, they can force him to do stuff or to agree to stuff because of the information that they have, right? They can just use it against him. Well, that's the only reason I think they did it. Like, they're not actually going to arrest him. There's not actually going to be a tribunal or anything. They just want to have information they can use against the next president of the United States, which is probably going to be Donald Trump again. I call special needs Christian rapper because I am a special needs and a Christian rapper. Yeah, that's honest. But Democrat, Republican here is supposed to be the same, but Republicans gets butthurt. I see your point, and I respect it. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. The population of the so-called West is the most apathetic and complacent in the world. This is why I place my hopes in the global South. The chain of imperialism will break at the weakest link first. Yeah, I mean, like, this, we're going to see the United States recede in a big way. Like, it's not going to do so quietly. Like, we saw how they started a war in Ukraine against Russia, right, in the Donbass. We saw them coup the Ukrainian government, empower literal Nazis in Ukraine, and essentially forced Putin into a position where he had to intervene. And then they act as though it was this unprecedented, unprovoked attack, right? Whereas the most of the rest of the world sees it for what it was, which was an attack by the United States against Russia. To create a proxy war, to attempt to draw down Russia's coffers, right? Which has been a complete disaster for the West, right? It's completely backfired. Like, they're not getting what they want out of it. And if anything, it's just strengthened ties between Russia and India and China and Saudi Arabia and all the BRICS groups and all this kind of stuff, right? Well, we're going to see more of that kind of shit. Like what's going on with Taiwan, right? Like that's 100% what they're trying to do. They're trying to create another proxy war situation because the theory is that we can draw down their resources and we can draw down their influence through these proxy wars, and it's safer for us to do it this way because it's not a direct conflict, right? But the issue with all of this is that the United States' entire economy is based on unipolar hegemony and the idea that everybody wants their dollars, right? And that's just not going to continue happening, especially as the United States begins to convince the vast majority of the rest of the world how dangerous and psychotic they are, and how they should be completely sequestered and how they should be completely cut out of a lot of these systems, right? Like, people are going to look at China and be like, oh, this place is stable. Like, China is stable and it's acting rationally in the world. And when it says it's going to do something, it does it, right? Whereas here's the United States acting like a fucking psychotic child, lying to everybody. The only solution it ever actually commits to is overt, crazed violence. Like, who wants to deal with this? And as the yuan and the renminbi gain in power and strength, more and more people are going to swing that way and trade that way. And it's going to destroy the dollar. It's going to absolutely destroy the dollar, which is the only advantage the Americans actually have. They don't have a manufacturing base, right? They don't have a real economy that's based on anything. They don't build anything. They don't even try to fix the infrastructure they have, right? They just literally are, the vast majority of their economy is just swapping commodities between one another. Like, that's the vast majority of their GDP, is just swapping commodities between each other and just erecting fake bullshit like crypto and NFTs. Like, it's all fucking nonsense. And while places like China and India and Russia and Saudi Arabia are actually building stuff and actually improving the society, doing things like big irrigation programs, trying to eradicate deserts, huge rail systems, the Belt and Road Initiative, right? While these countries are actually building something that the next generation can look at and be like, oh man, I'm so grateful that these guys actually built this thing that exists that we can use, right? While China is like literally turning on reactors that burn hotter than the sun itself, like, what's America doing? We're gonna build another submarine. It's got nukes on it. Yeah, that'll show them. Like, it's just baby brain at this point. It's just baby brain. And the Americans have pushed all their chips in on this idea that we've got papers that you want. So you'll make stuff for us for our papers you want. And eventually everybody's going to turn and be like, I don't want your fucking papers. Fuck off. Apparently, Trump took all kinds of classified documents about nuclear arsenal. I mean, okay. On Trump, historically, the Espionage Act has been used, like World War I, to punish war dissent. Yeah, I mean, the issue is also that the winners of wars tend to come out stronger, not weaker. Russia will have more land. Yeah, China will reunify with Taiwan sooner because of the U.S. provocations. Yeah, you must be talking about the U.S. Thanks, Gino. You bet. Good to see you, by the way. The military industry may be one of the few real remaining industries in the U.S. has left, and I wonder how long that can last. When the U.S. eventually loses access to cheap raw materials, chips, etc. The chips are the big one. The chips are the big one. And they refuse to build their own manufacturing base. And at this point, you've got to call it a refusal. Like, it's obvious what's happening. And clearly the billionaire class is just extracting as much as they can, right? And then abandoning. And what's going to happen to America is a balkanization, right? Like, the people of America are not going to tolerate this abandonment. They're not going to tolerate it. They're not going to look at their children who can't get food and think America is great and this is super good. And I'm so happy that 30 to 50% of my money that I make goes to a government that gives me fuck all for it. Like, that's what's happening. We're in a real, like, fucking Prince John moment here, for real. Of, like, The ruling class has gone psychotic, is extracting as much wealth as it possibly can from its citizenry. And in exchange, the citizenry gets fucking nothing. Like nothing. It's literally like Palestinian skeletons and Somali corpses and like let's coup yet another government, and it's all backfiring. It's all backfiring. You can't antagonize the entire planet while saying it's for your own good, right? That your country will be better as a liberal democracy like ours is. You can't keep doing that. It's going to fail. Yeah, people are going to look at the movie like Don't Look Up and be like, wow, this predicted the future. Yeah. And so the balkanization that's going to happen throughout the United States, like once it starts happening, it's going to be swift. Like I don't think people really understand. And there are signs of it even here in Canada. What's the one thing that I keep seeing? Come on now. Yeah, first of all, mega floods in California, right? When the federal government doesn't show up for this. So the article I'm looking for is, first of all, I mean, like, Ontario government refuses to address the healthcare crisis. Like, no shit. Yeah. Ford is expanding strong mayor powers to more cities, right? This is part of the system of abandonment, right? That the Ford government doesn't want to have to deal with actually governing, right? Conservatives hate governing. So what are they doing? They're just giving strong mayor powers, right? Dictator level powers. Like in the city of Toronto, apparently the mayor is going to be able to push through legislation that can only be defeated if two-thirds of the council come together and defeat it. So all you need is 30% of the council, right? Or 35%? Because two-thirds... Yeah, you need 35% of the council. Which, I mean, come on. Like, some of the people who are on the council are like Doug Ford's relatives. And like... and that's it. You can push through any legislation you like. Right? Democracy. And this is becoming the thing that is going to happen all throughout Ontario. That literally the mayor's office will just rule by edict. And so it's easy for conservatives to just get a mayor in. Right? It means that you just need to run one campaign one time. And then you can push through whatever legislation you like. And it's being done completely to maintain control as the system breaks down and returns to the local level, right? Local politics are steadily becoming the only type of politics that's actually going to matter to people, right? Like union politics is going to matter more than ever before. Like literally your workplace, like the politics that is happening within your base community that you live in, because the federal government's abandoning you. The provincial government is abandoning you, right? And it's going to happen on the state level too in America. The federal government and then the state government are just going to abandon people. And if you don't think that's serious, just ask the people of Flint, Michigan if they think that's serious, right? Just ask the people of New Orleans if they think that's serious. Like, it's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse as the system of power extracts as much as they can and then abandons, right? They don't refuse. They can't afford to, according to the logic of capitalism. Yet manufacturing can't come back because wages would be too high. The profit margin would decrease. Capitalism will not do it. Yeah. So because it's about worshiping money, right? It's not about people's quality of life. It's not about the actual things that they build. It's not about actually improving anything for anyone or sustaining anything, right? It's about money exclusively. So it's crazed. It's just a manic religion, which is why I call it a capitalist death cult, because it is. Because it's just a religious ideology. We invented money. Money is not real. It is literally something that comes out of the imagination of humanity, and we worship it. Like, what is that if not a god? Money is a god in our society, and we are choosing, explicitly at this point, choosing to worship that god ahead of improving the quality of life for citizens, building infrastructure, doing basic things to make sure everyone has access to the base necessities. And we could easily do it. And seriously, easily do it. If it wasn't for the psychotic capitalist class... Are you here? I'm going to pretend like we're good. Somebody say we're good. Uh-oh. 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 Are we still streaming? Says we're still streaming. It's back. Thanks, Oddity. Appreciate that, bud. All good. All good in the hood. Perfect. Yeah, soon Canada will achieve levels of democracy comparable to the shining example of democracy called Ukraine. Yeah, Canada seems to have more Ukrainian nationalists than Ukraine itself, after all. Well, I mean, we had the benefit of taking in all the Ukrainian Nazis, right? Like, that happened after World War II. There was a huge refugee shift that, and like, the Ukrainian refugees weren't going to go to fucking Russia, right? Where'd they come? They came here. So if you were a Ukrainian Nazi who needed to flee Ukraine for obvious reasons, and probably wasn't welcome across Europe for obvious reasons, well, where'd you come? Canada. Like, we have a huge Ukrainian nationalist sector here. Yeah, faith in the market and believe in the market are common phrases. Yeah, it's all worship. It's all worship. And we're doing a phenomenal job of doing it, man. Dude, this is straight up terrifying. Like, this whole section, like, we're so fucked. Oh yes, I love this. This is from Medium. The new Cold War was just declared, and nobody noticed. Yeah, in the heat of Madrid, a new Cold War was declared this summer, when NATO members and partners agreed to a fundamental change, the new strategic concept of 2022. Up until then, NATO had ensured time and time again that it will remain a regional alliance. Its sole purpose, as always, was to defend the territorial integrity of its members. That is, until now. NATO went from not having mentioned China in its earlier strategic concept to declaring them a systemic challenge and potential enemy. The PRC employs a broad range of political, economic, and military tools to increase its global footprint and project power, while remaining opaque about its strategy, intentions, and military buildup. Not all that unlike how Western countries operate. Just a few weeks ago, Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan and offered unwavering support. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden reaffirmed American commitment to the One China policy. The U.S. has spoken with two tongues on China for decades, and its strategy has always been to act with ambiguity, aloofness, in other words, to be opaque about U.S. intentions and military buildup. When Donald Trump came into office, a sigh of relief could be heard all over Beijing, as thousands of officials finally could stop analyzing the real intentions of the U.S. However hostile Trump treated China, he was always direct. When Joe Biden on 2 occasions managed to contradict the long-held traditional U.S. stance on Taiwan, we may or may not aid Taiwan militarily, I'm certain similar sighs of relief once again were heard in Beijing. Ironically, the new strategy concept makes it clear that the West will not tolerate China returning the favor. NATO is also concerned with China increasing its global footprint and projecting power. Another major point of contention, as we all know, China is a big country. It's home to 1/5 of the people on Earth. They represent about 19% of the world's GDP, and it's rising fast. Yet, they're severely underrepresented in any and all international organizations. Is it not well within China's right to have power equal to their size? Absolutely not, according to NATO. And again, it's not only intolerable. NATO has now outlined a new purpose in order to directly challenge any Chinese attempts at this. Furthermore, Chinese attempts at unshackling itself from its reliance on the world economy, and especially Western economy, is seen as hostile. Among other points, NATO lists Chinese aims to control its technological and industrial sectors, critical infrastructure, strategic materials, and supply chains as problematic. In other words, NATO is setting itself up to challenge Chinese attempts at reverting to autarky. 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 What? What? What's autarky? Self-sufficiency, independence, specifically. I feel like I could have put this together. Oh well. You know, that's life. You know? And of course I've lost the... There we go. An eerie echo of the past when the UK, through war, forced China to join the world economy. Now NATO is setting itself up to challenge Chinese attempts at leaving it. Which, by the way, China has made clear they intend to do so, in some form within 2035, when they plan to achieve socialism. It uses its economic leverage to create strategic dependencies and enhance its influence. It strives to subvert the rules-based international order, including in space, cyber, and maritime domains. I love rules-based international order, right? That's basically what they say when they want to just be like, when they don't listen to us! When they don't listen to us! Because we're the ones that are the important ones. In an incredible show of hypocrisy, the U.S. has made clear that African countries are free to buy grain and fertilizer from Russia to combat the looming food crisis. However, they risk breaking U.S. sanctions on Russia and will suffer the massive economic consequences. This is the rules-based international order NATO now seeks to defend. An order where the right to utilize economic leverage is exclusive to its allies. As China poses a more sophisticated and composed challenge to Western hegemony than the USSR ever did, NATO has, through its strategic concept, been rearranged to serve as a diplomatic tool. Up until the Madrid conference, it was a territorial defense pact. Now it's a values and interests defense pact, whatever that may mean and wherever they may be found. It also stresses the need to deepen ties to its partners in the Asia-Pacific, thus constructing a more global organization able to assert its values and interests in the region. Another frightening detail of the new strategic concept is its aim to deepen cooperation with private industry, which we know by dire example can lead to a military-industrial complex that craves war to sustain itself. With that in mind, it's not surprising that the strategic concept was cooked up over 11 years ago in Washington, D.C. as part of the so-called pivot, wherein President Obama declared that China will dethrone Russia as the main focal point of U.S. foreign policy obsession. In light of the pivot, the strategic concept is simply an echo of American foreign policy, yet again imposed on its allies whether they like it or not. Just look at Sweden and Finland, two countries that would not, under any circumstances, join NATO during the entire Cold War, and only did so in the recent extreme situation with Ukraine. Their only objective is defense against Russia. Yet before their application has been accepted, NATO took it upon themselves to declare a new potential enemy and Cold War against everyone's but America's interests. Waka wonk 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 wonk. Why'd the Chinese build their borders so close to all our military bases? If the Chinese were peaceful, they wouldn't have built so close to our military bases in their waters. Yeah. At this point, I sympathize more with the economic precepts of religions like Islam, which, like many religions, forbids things like usury and has some elements of social welfare inbuilt, than I do with secular, liberal, capitalist money worshippers. Well, because, like, I think the worst thing about these capitalists is they don't think they're religious. Like, they actually genuinely do think that, like, this is the natural thing. This is as natural as drinking water. No, it isn't. Like, it's an erected belief system. It's an ideological system that, when analyzed, you realize very quickly is a death cult. That's how it's structured. That's how it maintains its power. That's what it does. That's how it operates in the world. It's not attempting to do anything other than that, right? It's not attempting to be anything other than that. It's become obvious, and I compare, if you want to compare religions, right? I would rather talk to a Muslim or like a 10th century Christian. I would rather talk to those guys than these psychos. Like these people are like, you got to look at like some of the Aztec death cults to get really as brutal as America, right? Like that's kind of the brutality of the society, right? My dad wasn't any kind of leftist or anything, but because of Islam, he believed in social welfare, food and housing were human rights. Like, what kind of a society doesn't say out loud, everyone should have food and shelter? Like, that's the true dark heart of America and of the West, is that there are people, huge sections of the population, huge sections of people who vote, who actually do have an intrinsic problem with the idea that everyone should have food and shelter. That capitalism has convinced powerful people that starvation and homelessness are desirable. We want sections of the populace to starve. We want sections of the populace to be homeless. And if they don't want to starve or be homeless, then they just need to get a better job. They just need to sell themselves into slavery more effectively. And if they can't, then they should die. It really is that simple. Like, it's not extravagant. I'm not religious or making any kind of stance for or against, but it's refreshing to talk to the Arab part of my family, even though we have different politics. It's like we have the same understanding of reality, yeah? Talking to my American family, we might as well be in a different universe. Yeah, because you are. Like, you are. Like, most of the world's religions are at least fundamentally rooted in concepts like egalitarianism, that life has hardship and we should bind together in order to push back against those hardships, that there is such a thing as a universalist a universal concern, right? That there are effects that impact all of us, right? Like the need for food, the need for shelter, right? These are things that impact all of us. And so we should all come together collectively and collectively resolve these issues, right? But American capitalism comes in and pretends as though everyone's a solipsist. There we go. We're using it. Everyone's a solipsist, right? All that matters is your own personal reality. And if you disconnect from the grander system that obviously exists, and you obviously don't control or project, like this narcissistic worldview says you do, then you're going to be in La La Land, right? You're just going to be completely in La La Land if you're constantly walking around pretending as though it's up to every individual to individualize their individualism. And there is no such thing as a collective concern. There is no such thing as collectively coming together to make decisions collectively, right? Everything is just individuals individualizing their individualism. We need to bring back the ban on usury. Yet lending with interest is just parasitic, of course. But that's like the definition of capital, right? Like if you got rid of usury or like rent seeking or any of this kind of stuff, then capital would collapse, and you can't have that. Yeah, debt cancellation every 10 years or so, yeah. Bruh, you gotta swim hard for this here food and shelter, yeah. We're a first world country, by the way, yeah. Meanwhile, like, other systems are arising. And, like, I the more I look at the Chinese system, the thing that I'm constantly impressed by it is its resilience. And it's because it chooses to pursue goals, it achieves those goals, right? That, like, Yeah, there's no such thing as society. Like, what if like the fact that she wasn't completely castigated for that on the spot tells you how corrupt we are as a people, right? That Thatcher could literally walk around and be like, "There's no such thing as society." It's such a fucking joke, right? It's such a fucking joke. And the idea that the leader of a country said that out loud, like, she's a psycho, pretty black and white. There's no such thing as society. Well, then, if you're saying there's no such thing as society, then there's no such thing as morality. There's no such thing as ethics. There's no such thing as like the only type of relationship that you think exists is exerting force through violence. That's the only thing that exists. If you're walking around saying that there is no society, there's not. You don't need to actually be concerned with the well-being of other people, right? You're just outright saying out loud that you're a psychopath that will dominate others with violence, because that's the only type of relationship that exists in that worldview, right? But it's completely self-destructive. It's utterly self-destructive. Like if that's the type of quote unquote society that you're building, because you are building a society one way or the other, whether you deny it or not, right? It's like somebody pointing at a mountain and saying the mountain doesn't exist. Like, okay, you deluded narcissist, like, shut your mouth. So the type of society that you're building is a weak one, and is one that for a moment might have the appearance of being prosperous because it's making all of its wealth through extraction, right? Through going to other countries and stealing their resources and enslaving the populations, right? So for a little while, for a moment, you might have the appearance of prosperity, but as the society turns against itself, and as people within the society lose faith in one another, and as everybody turns on one another, that prosperity begins to gather under smaller and smaller hands and excludes and extracts wealth from others, right? Which is exactly what we're seeing and witnessing. And so the whole thing falls apart because it's a weak system. It's weak. You can't actually build a nation or a society. Sorry, not a society. But you can't build a nation. You can't build a civilization this way. You literally can't build a civilization this way. That America and Europe and Canada are all going to be faced with internal collapses. That and that internal collapse is built entirely on the premise that there is no society. We don't need to actually care about one another. We don't need to actually protect one another. Everybody's just scrabbling around like crabs in a bucket. Well, okay, if that's all you're doing, then you're never going to build a better bucket, right? You're never actually going to build a better place. You're never going to get a high-speed rail system. You're never going to get quantum computing. You're never going to get fusion reactors. You're never going to get the next level of tech. You're never going to get any of this stuff. You're not actually going to get to Mars. You're not actually going to build a moon base. You're not going to do any of this because it's all just scrabbling crabs in a bucket, right? We can see that writ large with what Elon Musk did in California, right? That at the same time that the Chinese were saying, hey, we should build high-speed rail, right? California said we should build high-speed rail too. Elon Musk came in, bribed a bunch of people, had them not do it, and now they don't have even a single scrap of rail built, while China has built high-speed rail all over, right? Like, it's gotten kind of embarrassing. It's gotten kind of embarrassing. And China, and then subsequently like Russia and India and all the surrounding countries, right? And the countries that China chooses to share this technology with, not the US likely, are going to suddenly go, and we're just going to be sitting here like, the way that the Chinese and other nations are going to look at us is the way that we would look at a guy with an 8-track player. Right? And imagine if the guy with the 8-track player was sitting there going, this is the cutting edge of technology. No one can fuck with me. While these guys are using, like, technology that lets you, like, probe thoughts into people's brains and shit. Like, yep, everyone's much easier to control, to predict, manipulate, take advantage of when they're isolated. A nice little self-sustaining consumer product. The individual. Yep. I mean, but it decays is the problem. It decays. It doesn't work. It doesn't actually work. Because it might work for a minute, right? It might work for even a generation, right? It might work for a bit. But it's a failing strategy overall. Because while you're manipulating and taking advantage of these people, the whole structure of the piece is rotted and decays from within. And another generation arises, and they see it, and they rebel against it. Because they understand what it is, right? The entire illusion of prosperity that was created by Reagan and Thatcher in the late 80s and 90s was built on three things. The opening up of China, the looting of the former USSR, and destroying the long-term future of their own economies for short-term gain. Selling tomorrow to pay for today. Turning the West's economies into hyper-financialized, deindustrialized, deregulated debt and bubble economies. And it's going to pop. Like, the bubble is going to pop, and it's going to pop hard. And it's going to pop hard because China and Russia and India and all these places are going to stop trading in the dollar, right? And lots of people are like there's this new organization coming up called BRICS. What, you think the Americans aren't shitting bricks about that? People who dream about returning to the glory days of the 1990s when the U.S. was the uncontested superpower, able to wage war and impose its system on any nation at will, are delusional. Absolutely. No, that's completely over. Like, completely over. Like, America cannot challenge China, right? And meanwhile, China is doing everything it can to build itself up, while America does everything it can to tear everybody down. You can't build a civilization that way, right? You can't do it. The only way you can build a civilization is by building it. And you're not going to actually win. Nobody is going to win. Given the level of technology we have now, given the level where it's gotten to, nobody wins in a war with China. There is no winner. And but the Americans, right? They're in this situation where it's if all you've got is a hammer, then everything's a nail, right? They only have access to war. That's all they are. That's all they've ever been. They don't know how to do anything else. And so a war with China is inevitable. It is. America will do it even if they know they'll lose. Because it's the only thing they have left. That out of an act of total delusional hubris and anger and frustration, they'll throw everything they've got at China, and they'll destroy a lot of shit, and they'll lose. Just like they lost in Vietnam, right? Just like they're losing in Ukraine, just like they lost in Afghanistan, right? If you're a nation of losers, all you can do is lose. Welcome to America, baby. All right, on that note, we finally reached the end. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. The billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes that you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.